Gradually, the viewership in the live stream reached over 1,000. However, seeing the comments flying across the screen from netizens, Sarah and Olivia couldn't bring themselves to smile. Oh, I got your account banned, so you made an alt to stream? Someone like her deserves no sympathy. She lent out her husband. What wouldn't she do? Let me sum it up. She basically rented out her husband to her BFF for money. Then, surprise, surprise, hubby and BFF caught feelings, made it real, and now she's mad they won't give him back, and he doesn't want her anymore. That's the gist. Serve her right, huh? Damn, people really stream themselves getting cyberbullied these days? Hilarious. If I were her husband, I wouldn't want her either. A woman who'd lend out her husband for cash? Who knows what other messed up things she'd do? What a clown, still begging for gifts. Ugh, so gross. I'm reporting her. How can you guys gang up on a pregnant woman like this? Is this fun for you? Trial separations happen all the time. Setting aside the facts for a moment, aren't her husband and BFF also wrong? Whoa, a valley girl. Get her, boys. Flame her, don't let up. Can't stand these valley girls. So damn annoying. In the stream, the comments scrolled relentlessly. Most people were mocking Sarah. Only a tiny handful of sisters dared to speak up for her. But as soon as these sisters defended Sarah, they were attacked by other netizens, some even getting attacked via iMessage. After that, these defenders went silent. The whole live stream turned into a massive cyberbullying session targeting Sarah. As for Sarah's hopes of making some quick cash, that was pure wishful thinking. Since it was an alt account, the peak viewership barely broke 1,000. Hardly anyone sent her gifts. Olivia did a quick calculation. The gifts amounted to maybe $360. Now Sarah was getting desperate. She started a stream, made barely any money, and just got insulted. Who could stand that? So, she started firing back directly at the netizens in the chat. You people, why won't you help me? The ones who are wrong are that cheating couple. Why aren't you attacking them instead of me? Are you all blind? As soon as she said this, the insults in the chat escalated sharply. Damn, she's unbelievable. Top-tier Valley Girl behavior right here. Can you guys handle this? Ah, she's triggered. She's triggered. Wow, this woman really deserves it. Good thing she handed her husband over to her BFF. Otherwise, how could he put up with her? How dare you curse at me, you f***ing idiot. Serves you right. All right, guys, reported her. Anyone else? Reading these comments, Sarah completely lost it, absolutely flipping out. You idiots. You're all idiots. Just here to insult me instead of sending gifts, right? I hope you all get hit by a car and die. Sarah screamed hysterically into the stream, completely losing all restraint. Damn it. I'll log on and immediately get attacked. What the hell did I ever do to any of you? With a woman like this, I don't know how her ex-husband put up with her. Lucky they divorced. Yeah, her BFF basically saved the guy. Just a pathetic clown, not worth any sympathy. Stupid woman. Anyone who sends her a gift is an idiot. I swear I'll look down on them for a whole year. Only a fool would give her gifts. Just as Sarah was about to unleash another tirade against the netizens, her stream was suddenly banned. Along with it, the new alt account she had just created was also banned. Arg, I'm so pissed. Sarah was furious, but utterly helpless. Right then, she felt like she could kill every single one of those netizens. Sigh. Olivia stood to the side, watching the whole thing unfold, a sense of powerlessness washing over her. She knew Sarah's plan, to play the victim, gain sympathy, and incite netizens to cyberbully Ethan and Jessica, had completely backfired. There would be no more chances. Meanwhile, at the manor, in a room on the second floor, Ethan and Jessica were busy in bed, diligently trying to make a baby, completely oblivious to the drama unfolding on social media. Half an hour later, the battle ended. Hubby, I'm thirsty after a while, Jessica gently nudged Ethan, murmuring softly. Their earlier exercise had been quite intense, and she was covered in sweat. Now, her mouth was dry, and she desperately wanted water, but she felt too weak, like she couldn't even walk. I'm wiped out too. Go downstairs and get it yourself. Ethan's voice was thick with exhaustion. He was drained too and didn't want to move an inch. Okay, Jessica knew he was exhausted and didn't press him. Instead, she reached out and gently stroked his head, her eyes full of affection. After about 10 minutes, Jessica had recovered some strength. She got up, slipped on her pajamas, and went downstairs to get water. Ethan, though feeling slightly less tired, still felt drained. Before long, Jessica returned to the room, a glass of water in her hand. Want some water? Jessica stood by the bed, smiling down at Ethan. Ethan glanced at her, saying weakly, I have no energy. I need you to feed me. Oof. Honestly, you. Jessica huffed lightly, but sat on the edge of the bed, helped Ethan sit up, letting him lean against her. Then, She carefully held the glass to his lips. After he drank, the couple chatted in bed for a while longer. Soon, physically and mentally exhausted, they fell asleep, wrapped in each other's arms. In the days that followed, Ethan and Jessica were immersed in happiness. Except for the few days each month when Jessica was on her period, the two were busy trying for a baby. Of course, Ethan wasn't sure if Jessica genuinely wanted a child or just really enjoyed the process. Either way, she expected him to perform his marital duties almost every day. Thankfully, Ethan was in good shape. An average guy probably wouldn't have been able to keep up with Jessica's demands. Of course, when Ethan genuinely wasn't feeling well, Jessica was understanding and didn't pressure him. Meanwhile, Sarah had quieted down after the backlash from her attempt to play the victim on TikTok Live. Since then, she seemed to have given up all hope of reconciling with Ethan and hadn't tried to contact him again. Time flew by, and 3 months passed in the blink of an eye. It was already November. The weather grew colder each day. By Ethan's calculation, Sarah must have been nearly 6 months pregnant. One day, Ethan took the initiative to call Sarah. "Ethan, what do you want?" Sarah sounded surprised to hear from him, but her tone towards her ex-husband was anything but friendly. "Sarah, you think I enjoy calling you?" Ethan retorted, getting straight to the point. "Look, I just realized you must be almost 6 months along now. Didn't you claim the baby you're carrying is mine? So, let's make some time to go to the hospital for an amniocentesis and get a paternity test done. That way, we can finally confirm whether this baby is actually mine or not." Ethan just wanted to settle the paternity issue quickly so he could draw a clear line with Sarah. However, Sarah's reaction was strange. She didn't agree, instead saying guiltily, "I don't have time. We can do it later when I'm free. Anyway, the baby is yours." With that, she hung up. Ethan stared at his phone, baffled by the abrupt hang-up. Sarah kept insisting the baby was his, yet when he suggested a paternity test, she refused. Did she really intend to wait until after the baby was born? Ethan didn't understand her reasoning, but he wasn't overly anxious. If the child was his, he'd support it. If not, it had nothing to do with him. If Sarah wanted to stall, let her stall. Meanwhile, at Sunnybrook Estates, Sarah sat on the living room sofa, staring blankly into space. After a moment, she buried her face in her hands and broke down sobbing. The truth was, it wasn't that she didn't want to get the paternity test. She didn't have the courage. She was terrified the baby wasn't Ethan's. After the disastrous TikTok Live incident, she had completely lost hope of ever getting back together with Ethan. She'd asked her parents for a few $1,000s and gone to the hospital alone, intending to terminate the pregnancy. Since reconciliation with Ethan was impossible, keeping the baby seemed pointless. It would only be a burden. But at the hospital, after an examination, the doctor delivered shocking news. She had a severe case of vaginitis, an inflammatory condition. The doctor explained it could be caused by hormonal changes, multiple sexual partners, STIs, or long-term antibiotic use. The bottom line was, because of this condition, she couldn't get an abortion. She had to treat the vaginitis first before even considering the procedure. Hearing this, Sarah felt like her world had collapsed. Still clinging to hope, she asked the doctor how long the treatment might take. But the doctor told her case was somewhat complicated. Treatment could take 4 to 6 months, possibly even longer. Sarah didn't even remember how she left the hospital that day. All she knew was that the world felt dark, utterly devoid of hope. Even now, she was still undergoing medical treatment. The illness would likely persist even after the baby was born. She felt utterly desperate. It seemed she had no other choice now but to carry the baby to term. That was the real reason she didn't dare get the paternity test. She was terrified the baby wasn't Ethan's. She couldn't bear to face that possibility. All she could do now was pray that the child was Ethan's. Then, after the baby was born, she could use the child as leverage to demand a hefty sum of child support from Ethan and Jessica. That way, she could recoup some of her losses. Of course, if the baby wasn't Ethan's, she would get nothing. Nothing but a child whose biological father was unknown. Curled up on the sofa now, Sarah thought back on everything, overwhelmed by regret, despair, and helplessness. She knew exactly how she had contracted vaginitis, and now she regretted it, bitterly regretted it. But there was no turning back. After a long while, Sarah finally composed herself, wiped away her tears, and stood up from the sofa. "I haven't lost yet. I can't just give up," she told herself. "As long as this baby is Ethan's, I can get a large amount of child support. Yes, I can't lose heart." After this pep talk, her mood improved slightly. She sniffled, wiped her nose, and headed to the kitchen. She was hungry. Ever since becoming pregnant, she found herself getting hungry very quickly, especially as her belly grew larger. This baby was her only chance to turn things around now, so she couldn't let it go hungry. She went into the kitchen to make herself something to eat. She couldn't afford a housekeeper anymore. She had to do everything herself. At first, she couldn't even cook properly, managing to crack a pot and break several bowls. Every time she choked down her own barely edible cooking, she couldn't help but remember her life with Ethan. When Ethan was around, he always cooked her favorite meals. But now that Ethan was gone, even getting a hot meal felt like a luxury. Initially, she would order takeout, but gradually, she stopped, reluctant to spend the money, because she was broke. Now, she no longer carried her designer bags when she went out. She'd sold them all secondhand on social media. If she hadn't, she might have starved these past few months. She had very little money left now, pinching every penny. When she went grocery shopping, she hesitated to buy meat. She couldn't afford to fix her car when it broke down, and even taking a taxi felt painfully extravagant. Whenever Laura asked her to go shopping, she felt too embarrassed and made excuses to decline. Sarah could clearly feel herself drifting away from her former socialite lifestyle. She and her BFFs were gradually becoming inhabitants of different worlds. The November days were filled with dreary, endless rain. As the weather turned colder, Ethan had stopped his morning runs, preferring instead to snuggle in bed with Jessica. During the day, he skipped the fitness center too, content to stay within the warm manor, spending quality time with Jessica, playing games, and just relaxing. Life was easy and comfortable. One evening, around dusk, Ethan changed his clothes and headed downstairs. Reaching the bottom of the stairs, he saw Jessica and Jenna curled up on the sofa, snacking and binge-watching a show. This wasn't Jenna's first visit. She practically treated the manor like her own home now. Since Green Valley University wasn't far from the manor, she often popped over whenever she had free time after starting classes. The first time she came, faced with the sheer size and luxury of the manor, Jenna had been awkward and out of place. But with repeated visits, she'd grown familiar and dropped the formality. Now, she walked in like it was her own house. Ethan watched the two women glued to the screen, smiled helplessly, and walked over. "All right, pause the show. Time for dinner," Ethan announced, standing before the sofa. He noticed on his way down that the housekeepers had already set the steak dinner on the dining table nearby, waiting for them. Dinner already? So soon? Jessica and Jenna looked up, surprised. They'd been so absorbed in their show, they hadn't noticed the time fly by. Glancing out the window, they saw it was already dark. "Let's finish this episode after dinner, sis-in-law," Jenna said, getting up with a smile. "I've got a whole list of shows saved up. I'll share them all with you later." "Oh, perfect. I've been running out of things to watch." Jessica's eyes lit up, pleasantly surprised. With the weather getting colder, she hadn't wanted to go anywhere, but staying home got boring. If her sister-in-law had recommendations, it would be a great way to pass the time. "Ugh, I can't get up. Hubby, my legs are asleep. Carry me." Just as Jessica tried to stand, she realized her legs had gone completely numb from sitting curled up for so long. She turned pleading eyes to Ethan, holding out her arms. "Sigh, what am I going to do with you?" Ethan shook his head with a soft sigh, but stepped forward without hesitation. He scooped her up princess style into his arms and carried her towards the dining table. Despite his resigned tone, his expression held no impatience, only affection. "Hubby, you're the best. Here, a reward kiss for you." Mwah. Jessica wrapped her arms around his neck, leaned in, and planted a kiss on his cheek. "This side needs one too." Ethan chuckled, turning his other cheek towards her. "Okay." Jessica giggled and leaned in for another kiss. Jenna stood nearby, looking utterly speechless at these two lovebirds. Ever since her first visit, she'd noticed how clingy her sister-in-law was with her brother. They were constantly engaging in public displays of affection. As the single one, all she could do was sigh inwardly. Soon, the three were seated and starting their steak dinner. "Jenna, it's gotten cold lately. Make sure you bundle up at school, okay? Don't catch a cold." Jessica remembered suddenly, looking up to remind her sister-in-law. "Don't worry, sis-in-law." Jenna smiled lightly, not too concerned. "My roommate and I bought several of those super warm padded jackets. I won't get sick." "All right, you have some nerve telling her that. You should watch out for yourself," Ethan said helplessly, placing a piece of grilled salmon steak on Jessica's plate. Just a few days ago, when the temperature dropped, Jessica hadn't dressed warmly enough and had caught a chill, complete with a runny nose. Luckily, snuggling up to Ethan all night seemed to have cured her. "Oomph. I'm reminding Jenna because I almost caught a cold," Jessica pouted, looking slightly indignant. Okay. Eat up," Ethan said, picking up a piece of jalapeno beef and holding it to her lips. However, Jessica frowned slightly, seeming reluctant. "That's too spicy," I don't want it. She looked resistant. What's wrong? You seem to have lost your appetite these past couple of days. Ethan put down his fork, his expression turning serious as he looked at her with concern. He wasn't sure why, but she'd been eating very little recently, clearly not enjoying her food as much as usual. I don't know, I just don't feel like eating. Jessica shook her head lightly. She really didn't know what was wrong. She just had no appetite and occasionally felt a bit nauseous. Maybe I should get you some supplements tomorrow? Ethan suggested after a moment's thought. Bro, maybe you should take sis-in-law to the doctor tomorrow, Jenna proposed, looking up from her meal. Although her sister-in-law seemed fine apart from the lack of appetite, getting checked out at the hospital couldn't hurt. All right, fine. I'll take her to the hospital tomorrow. Ethan nodded, agreeing that a checkup was the safer option. The hospital? Do we have to? Maybe just some digestive aids would be enough. Going to the hospital is such a hassle. Jessica seemed reluctant. She felt fine, just not hungry. It didn't feel like an illness, and the hospital seemed like too much trouble. That's settled then. We're going to the hospital tomorrow. Ethan made the decision final, his tone firm. Okay, Jessica conceded. She wasn't unhappy about it, though. On the contrary, a faint smile touched her lips. She could clearly feel how much Ethan cared about her, how concerned he was. It warmed her heart, filling her with a gentle sense of happiness. All right, even if you don't feel like eating much, try to have a little something. You can't keep an empty stomach. Ethan picked up a piece of beef stroganoff and offered it to Jessica. Okay, I'll listen to my hubby. Though she didn't really want it, Jessica obediently opened her mouth and accepted the bite Ethan fed her. However, as soon as she swallowed, she felt an overwhelming urge to vomit. There was again that inexplicable nausea. Jessica covered her mouth and hurried to the bathroom. Honey, Ethan watched her rush off, his expression filled with worry. He quickly got up and followed her. In the bathroom, Jessica was leaning over the sink, gagging but unable to throw up. Honey, maybe I should take you to Green Valley Memorial Hospital right now, Ethan said softly, coming up beside her and gently rubbing her back. He had initially thought it was just a simple loss of appetite, nothing serious. But now, it seemed Jessica might really be ill. At that moment, Jenna had also followed and was standing at the bathroom door, watching Jessica's nauseated state with a thoughtful expression. After a few moments of dry heaving, Jessica felt slightly better. She looked up at Ethan's worried face, shook her head gently, and said reluctantly, It's too late now. Let's just go to Green Valley Memorial Hospital tomorrow. For some reason, the thought of the hospital made her uneasy. Ethan hesitated, not immediately agreeing. How are you feeling right now? He asked. Jessica managed a small smile. I feel better now. All right then. Ethan finally gave in, unable to refuse her. They would go for a checkup tomorrow. It was already dark, and most doctors would have gone home. Besides, Jessica's symptoms were just loss of appetite and some nausea. It wasn't an emergency requiring immediate medical attention. Ethan, Jessica, has it occurred to you? Maybe Jessica isn't sick. Just then, Jenna, who had been standing by the door, couldn't help but speak up. She felt like her sister-in-law's symptoms didn't seem like illness, but more like pregnancy. Not sick? Then what is it? Ethan and Jessica both looked completely baffled. Is it possible that Jessica's pregnant? Jenna prompted gently. Pregnant? Hearing this, both Ethan and Jessica's eyes widened, their expression stunned. But after thinking about it carefully, it suddenly dawned on them that Jessica's symptoms really did resemble pregnancy. Yeah, how did I not think of that? Honey, could you be pregnant? Ethan's face lit up, his excitement becoming uncontrollable. Although he'd been married before, during his 3 years with Sarah, she had never gotten pregnant. When Sarah finally did get pregnant, they ended up divorcing. So, Ethan was a complete novice in this area, which explained why he'd been so slow on the uptake. Besides, Jessica had only been showing symptoms like loss of appetite and occasional vomiting for 2 weeks. The possibility hadn't even crossed his mind. Now, prompted by Jenna, it suddenly hit him, and the more he thought about it, the more likely it seemed. Jessica might really be pregnant. After all, her symptoms really did seem like pregnancy. Am I pregnant? As for Jessica, she looked as though she'd been struck by a huge, wonderful surprise. An expression of disbelief crossed her face, yet a smile uncontrollably bloomed on her lips. She too suddenly realized, that's right, the way I've been feeling. It might not be sickness, it could be pregnancy. She'd been actively trying to conceive with Ethan every day, yet she hadn't suspected a thing when the day might have actually arrived. Jessica, I really think you might be pregnant. Have you and my brother, been intimate recently? Jenna asked, a little uncertainly. Hearing this, the young couple exchanged glances. Intimate recently? Of course they had. Every day, in fact. several times a day. Thinking about this, they both felt even more certain. She must be pregnant. All right, tomorrow I'll take Jessica to the hospital for a checkup to see if she's really pregnant. Ethan couldn't hide the joy on his face. For years, he had longed for a child, but Sarah had never conceived. When she finally did, it wasn't even certain if the child was his. He never expected that now. Jessica might be pregnant. If it was true, he was going to be a father. The thought of finally having a child of his own filled him with uncontrollable happiness. I want to go now. Mentioning the hospital checkup, Jessica, who had been so resistant just moments ago when she thought she was merely sick, was now incredibly eager. Her watery eyes sparkled brightly, and she looked restless with anticipation, because she desperately wanted to confirm if she was really pregnant. If she really was, it would be wonderful. Then she could have her own child, a child belonging to her and Ethan. Jessica, it's too late now. The doctor's offices are closed. Let's go tomorrow. Jenna couldn't help but chuckle seeing her sister-in-law's impatience. Just a minute ago, she didn't want to go to the hospital, and now she was so eager. Right, we'll go first thing tomorrow morning. Ethan was overjoyed too. Even though it wasn't confirmed yet, he couldn't contain his happiness. All right, come out and eat your steak dinner. The food's getting cold. Seeing the couple standing there in the bathroom, somewhat at a loss, Jenna sighed helplessly, reminded them, and turned back to the dining table. However, right now, Ethan and Jessica had no appetite for steak dinner. Their minds were completely filled with thoughts of the baby. Honey, am I really pregnant? Jessica looked up, blinking her moist eyes expectantly at Ethan. I don't know either. We'll find out after the checkup tomorrow. Ethan shook his head slightly, unable to suppress the smile spreading across his face. His gaze towards Jessica softened even more. Okay. Jessica didn't say anything else, simply lowering her gaze to her flat stomach, a touch of maternal tenderness in her eyes. Come on, let's go eat that steak dinner. Ethan supported her as they walked out of the bathroom. I might not even be pregnant yet. You don't need to support me like this. Jessica couldn't help but laugh, half exasperated, seeing how carefully he was holding her. It wasn't even confirmed, but Ethan was already acting like a different person, treating her completely like a pregnant woman. You might be pregnant now, so it's better to be careful. Ethan paid no mind to her words, continuing to support her cautiously as they walked to the dining table. All right, you have a point. Jessica thought about it and agreed. Although it wasn't confirmed, she also felt it was better to be careful. Back at the dining table, Ethan pulled out a chair and helped Jessica sit down slowly. Come on, you two, eat something, Jenna said helplessly, watching them hesitate to pick up their chopsticks. After sitting down, the couple's attention was fixed entirely on Jessica's stomach, completely ignoring the food on the table. You eat, don't worry about us. Ethan glanced at Jenna before turning his head back to gaze at Jessica's belly. He hadn't expected this day to come so suddenly. His mind still felt a bit fuzzy, unreal. Jessica felt much the same. Even though she'd been actively trying to conceive with Ethan every day, now that the moment might have arrived, it felt like a dream. The feeling was dreamlike, surreal. After finishing their steak dinner, the couple went back to their room early. But unlike usual, this time, their early return wasn't about trying to make a baby. This time, they simply lay on the bed doing nothing. Jessica gently stroked her abdomen, a soft smile constantly playing on her lips. Ethan sat beside her, occasionally leaning down to press his ear against her belly, listening for any sound. However, he couldn't hear anything. We don't even know if I'm pregnant yet. And even if I am, the baby hasn't even started developing much. You won't hear anything. Jessica watched his restless fidgeting, feeling a mix of helplessness and overwhelming happiness. You must be pregnant. Look, your belly already seems a little bigger than before, Ethan said quite seriously, pointing at her smooth, pale stomach. That's just because I gained a little weight recently. Jessica rolled her eyes at him. Ethan seemed not to hear her, moving closer to cuddle her, his face full of anticipation. Honey, do you think the little one will be a boy or a girl? Little one? This is my baby. Can't you talk properly? Jessica pouted, slightly annoyed, and gently tapped his chest. Haha, slip of the tongue, slip of the tongue. Ethan realized his mistake. Jessica lay in his arms, looking up at him. You should probably focus on thinking of some names for the baby. Right, it's time to think about names. We'll need two, one for a boy and one for a girl. Ethan's expression immediately turned serious. Since they didn't know the gender yet, he decided they needed both. Well then, you take your time thinking, Jessica murmured softly. The next morning, 7 o'clock sharp. Ethan and Jessica, usually late sleepers, were uncharacteristically up bright and early. After quickly washing up, they drove straight to the hospital. Following Jessica's checkup and a long wait, they finally got the results. Thankfully, their hopes weren't dashed. The doctor confirmed it. Jessica was really pregnant. The moment it was confirmed, relieved smiles spread across the young couple's faces. They had been terrified it was just a false alarm. Thankfully, it wasn't. Leaving the hospital, Ethan supported Jessica constantly, afraid she might trip or bump into something. Jessica herself was extremely careful, descending stairs slowly and deliberately. She even skirted around puddles on the sidewalk, no matter how shallow, exercising utmost caution. On the way back, Ethan drove very slowly and steadily, glancing over at Jessica's belly from time to time, a grin plastered on his face that he couldn't suppress. Upon returning to the manor, Ethan immediately called his parents. Hearing that their daughter-in-law was pregnant, the older couple was ecstatic. They had always longed for a grandchild, but their wish hadn't been fulfilled because Sarah hadn't been able to conceive before. They couldn't believe their son had managed it with Jessica in just 6 months. Finally, they could have a grandchild to dote on. On the phone, Margaret repeatedly instructed Ethan to take excellent care of her daughter-in-law and her precious grandchild. If anything happened to them, she warned, he needn't bother coming home ever again. After hanging up, the couple bought the earliest tickets and rushed straight to Green Valley. Jessica also called Robert. Upon learning that his miss was pregnant, the usually composed Robert was uncharacteristically flustered. He became quite agitated, even a little unsure of what to do, saying he'd buy a ticket immediately to come see her himself. And so, that evening, William, Margaret, and Robert all arrived at the manor together. At the dinner table, all eyes were on Jessica. "Son, you need to take extra good care of your wife from now on. If she so much as bumps herself, you'll answer to me," Margaret instructed Ethan sternly. She had waited so long for this precious grandchild. Now, nothing else mattered more. "That's right, son. Your wife is pregnant. Spend more time with her, watch over her, make sure nothing happens," added the usually taciturn William, speaking with immense gravity, as if discussing a matter of utmost importance. Okay, I know. You've both told me countless times," Ethan nodded, feeling a bit resigned. Ever since the pregnancy was confirmed, his parents hadn't stopped worrying, constantly reminding him to be careful about this and that. His ears were practically numb from hearing it. Robert, too, gave Jessica plenty of advice and patiently instructed Ethan, emphasizing the need to take good care of his miss. Ethan naturally agreed readily to everything. Later that night, in their room, under the warm yellow light, Jessica snuggled against Ethan's broad, solid chest on the soft bed, a gentle smile on her face, her eyes filled with contentment. Ethan held her soft form close, his expression doting. "Honey, the doctor said you can't stay up late anymore. It's not good for the baby." I know. I won't stay up late anymore." Jessica nodded seriously, making up her mind to sleep early and wake early from now on, for the baby's sake. Ethan smiled and continued. "The doctor also said we shouldn't have sex too frequently from now on, only occasionally, and not too vigorously." "Exactly. So, you can't keep pestering me to perform my marital duties every day anymore, and don't force me to drink those herbal supplements all the time either." Jessica huffed playfully, lifting her delicate face to look at him defiantly. "You're overthinking it. If it wasn't to get pregnant, I wouldn't have made you drink those things every day. For the baby's sake, I definitely won't let you touch me again." Ethan couldn't help but laugh. "All right, you said it. We won't do that anymore. Don't you regret it later." He didn't believe for a second she could resist. In his eyes, the girl was completely hooked. She might manage a day or two, but give it time, and she definitely wouldn't be able to hold back. Jessica pouted slightly. "Like I'd regret it. We have a baby now. I'm not going to mess around with you. From now on, we'll just sleep properly and not think about those messy things. It's better for the baby." Okay, you said it. "Make sure you remember," Ethan said, looking at her earnest expression, as if she weren't the same person who used to constantly demand he perform his duties. "I told you I won't. I'm not like you, with your mind constantly in the gutter." Jessica glanced at him with mock disdain, a hint of playful disgust on her face. "All right, let's drop it." Ethan didn't dwell on the topic, changing the subject. "By the way, honey, do you want a boy or a girl?" Jessica thought for a moment. "I don't know. As long as it's our child, I'll love it. What about you?" "Me?" Ethan pondered. "I like a girl. Boys are too rowdy. A girl will be nice, pretty like you." Jessica puffed her cheeks, looking slightly displeased. "So, if I have a boy, you won't like him?" No, of course not. I like a boy too. As long as the baby is mine, I'll love them." That's more like it." Jessica was finally satisfied. Then, a thought struck her. Oh, right, do you think Mom and Dad might prefer a boy? If I have a girl, will they be unhappy? Jessica started to worry. She knew the older generation often harbored traditional ideas about preferring boys to carry on the family line. And since this was Ethan's first child, his parents would surely hope for a boy. If it was a girl, they might be disappointed. Relax, my parents don't care about that. They just want a grandchild. Whether it's a grandson or a granddaughter doesn't matter to them at all. Ethan reassured her softly, ruffling her hair with a gentle smile. Oh good, that's a relief. Jessica finally felt at ease. Okay, it's getting late. Let's sleep. Remember what the doctor said. No staying up late. Ethan glanced at the clock on the wall. It was already 10. Time for bed. Okay, I'll sleep now. Jessica, newly pregnant and prioritizing the baby above all else, immediately lay down obediently, closing her eyes to sleep. After Ethan turned off the light, he lay down beside her. However, half an hour later, Jessica's eyes snapped open in the darkness. Honey, I can't sleep. I want to play on my iPhone. Usually around this time, she'd still be binge-watching shows or scrolling through her phone. Go to sleep this early was unheard of. The sudden change in her routine was hard to get used to. Nope, no staying up late. Go to sleep. Ethan naturally refused. Oh, Jessica pouted, reluctantly closing her eyes again. But half an hour later, still wide awake, she opened her eyes once more. Honey, I still can't sleep. You have to sleep even if you can't. Have you forgotten what you said earlier? Ethan sighed, opening his eyes. He hadn't fallen asleep either. Jessica instantly remembered her promise from earlier that she wouldn't stay up late anymore. Going back on her word now would be too embarrassing. All right, fine. I'll sleep. Jessica closed her eyes, silently counting sheep, trying to lull herself to sleep. 10-odd minutes later, she frustratingly opened her eyes again, still awake. She glanced at Ethan, only to find him scrolling through Instagram reels on his iPhone. He had headphones on, so it was silent. Honey, why are you on your iPhone? Jessica narrowed her eyes, looking displeased. They'd agreed not to stay up late, but here he was secretly using his phone behind her back. Ethan cleared his throat, stating matter-of-factly, You're pregnant, so you can't stay up late. I'm not pregnant, so I can stay up late and use my phone. Jessica just stared at him silently. Just go to sleep. You're the pregnant one. You can't stay up late. Ethan urged, feeling a little guilty. Now, Jessica was really annoyed. Nope, if I can't stay up late, neither can you. You have to go to sleep early with me. Slightly angry, she snatched Ethan's iPhone right out of his hand, confiscating it. I'm pregnant, giving up my phone and go to sleep early for the baby, and you have the nerve to scroll right in front of me? Honey, Ethan felt rather wronged and was about to protest, but Jessica cut him off forcefully. No talking. Hold me. Cuddle me to sleep. Jessica snuggled into his arms, taking his hand and placing it around herself. All right, Ethan sighed inwardly, resigned. He gently patted her back, slowly coaxing her to sleep. The next day, the weather cleared up. Hearing that Jessica was pregnant, Laura dragged her Daniel over to visit. Seeing Jessica pregnant already, Laura felt a pang of envy and a sudden desire to be a mother herself. But then she thought about her Daniel's performance in that department, and she sighed softly. She had realized that her Daniel really wasn't great in that area, nowhere near Ethan's level. All those herbal supplements he'd taken hadn't helped at all. She planned to take Daniel to a major hospital soon to get properly checked out and treated. In the afternoon, finding themselves bored at the manor, the four of them went out shopping together. Previously, when Jessica and Laura went shopping, they usually hit up clothing boutiques, jewelry stores, that got their nails done. This time, however, Jessica led Laura to children's clothing stores, toy stores, formula shops, and finally, mother and baby stores. In short, they bought heaps of baby supplies, children's toys, and lots of kids' clothes. Being her first pregnancy, Jessica had only intended to browse, but she couldn't resist and ended up buying quite a lot. Jessica, you only just got pregnant. You won't need this stuff for a while, right? Laura couldn't help but point out, looking at all the baby things Ethan was carrying. It's fine. We'll need it sooner or later. Jessica smiled, looking utterly delighted. Even though the baby wasn't born yet, she was already getting a taste of motherhood. And how did it feel? Pretty good, actually. Okay, then. Laura opened her mouth, but decided against saying anything further. In the evening, tired from shopping, they went for dinner at a Texas smokehouse and then caught a movie at an AMC theater. It wasn't until 9 p.m. that they finally said their goodbyes and headed home. Back home, Jessica looked at the sofa piled high with baby goods, a completely satisfied expression on her face. Since staying up late was off the table, the couple headed to their room to shower and get ready for bed at just 10 o'clock. After showering, Ethan had just settled into bed when Jessica, who was already waiting, immediately snuggled up against his back. "Honey," Jessica cooed softly in his ear like a valley girl, her voice breathy and hinting a desire. Ethan instantly tensed. "What do you think you're doing? What do you think?" "Jessica, have you forgotten what you said yesterday?" "I don't remember." Jessica played dumb, pressing on regardless. "Jessica, you said yesterday that for the baby's sake, we wouldn't do this anymore. Are you going back on your word?" "You." Before Ethan could finish, Jessica silenced him with a kiss. Half an hour later, Jessica lay contentedly in his arms, looking completely blissful. Ethan, meanwhile, was breathing heavily, a look of resignation on his face. What would he do? Jessica had insisted, and he couldn't exactly refuse. "Jessica, you little cheat. Last night you swore up and down that you wouldn't let me touch you again for the baby's sake, and here you are, couldn't even last a day. I'm never believing your promises again." "What are you talking about?" "I don't understand. I have no idea what you mean." Jessica stuck out her tongue playfully, committing fully to her act. "You." Ethan was exasperated, but helpless against her. "All right, no more talking. Sleepy time." Jessica pulled the covers up, hugged him, and settled down to sleep. Ethan sighed helplessly, turned off the light, and settled down to sleep early with her. Before long, they drifted off to sleep in each other's arms. The days passed one by one, and the weather grew colder. Since becoming pregnant, Jessica Smith had been paying extra attention to her health. Naturally, as her husband, Ethan Thompson was often by her side, taking meticulous care of her. In the blink of an eye, Christmas arrived. At the manor, Jessica Smith gave the housekeeper and maids their Christmas holiday off. Then, the couple drove back together to Willow Creek Village to celebrate the holiday. Because of the pregnancy, the moment Jessica Smith returned to her parental home, the elderly couple started treating her like royalty, waiting on her hand and foot. They wouldn't let her do anything, insisting she rest. Even when Jessica Smith offered to help, the elderly couple would firmly refuse. When Ethan Thompson merely asked Jessica Smith to fetch his slippers, the elderly couple caught him and gave him an earful, followed by a stern warning. If he dared order Jessica Smith around again, he'd be kicked out of the house and wouldn't be spending Christmas there. The scene made Jenna Thompson and Jessica Smith double over with laughter. In short, back in the Thompson family home, Jessica Smith was the supreme authority, untouchable. Meanwhile, Ethan Thompson, back in his parental home, ranked even lower than the family's golden retriever. On Christmas, snow fell heavily, blanketing the world in white. Inside the house, Ethan Thompson's family gathered around, eating Christmas dinner and watching festive TV specials, enjoying the warmth and cheer. The holiday spirit was in full swing. Meanwhile, as Ethan Thompson took Jessica Smith back to his hometown for the holidays, Sarah Young, also heavily pregnant, returned to her own hometown to spend Christmas with her parents. Compared to the joyous warmth of Ethan Thompson's family gathering, the Christmas dinner at Sarah Young's home was rather quiet and subdued, the atmosphere far less cheerful. The family of three sat in the room, eating their Christmas dinner, but none of them wore the happy expressions fitting the holiday. This was especially true for Sarah Young. Her expression was bitter and aggrieved, unable to muster any joy. Having returned for the holidays these past 2 days, she had overheard plenty of gossip about herself. Ever since she exposed the matter of loaning her husband to her BFF on social media, the story had spread throughout Willow Creek Village. Everyone in Willow Creek Village knew she had lent her husband to someone else for money. Now her husband didn't want her, and she was struggling alone, heavily pregnant. These days, she didn't even dare walk around Willow Creek Village, preferring to stay home. Every time she went out, she could feel the strange stares from the Willow Creek residents. Although these Willow Creek residents wouldn't say anything nasty to her face, there was no shortage of pointing and whispering behind her back. Michael Young and Margaret faced a similar situation. Ever since their daughter's affairs became known in Willow Creek Village, their standing there had become rather awkward. Every few days, they would hear Willow Creek residents gossiping, discussing their family's business. Over this matter, the fiery Margaret had even gotten into fights with several old women in Willow Creek Village. They argued fiercely, and the end result was Margaret being laughed at by all the Willow Creek residents, looking like a clown. "Mom, Dad, I'm going back to Green Valley in 2 weeks," Sarah Young said, putting down her chopsticks and addressing the elderly couple. She felt she simply couldn't stay in Willow Creek Village any longer. She didn't dare go outside. Adults were usually fine, not embarrassing her to her face, but when she encountered children, those brats would laugh at her right in front of her. Children have no filter. They say whatever comes to mind without considering her feelings. Hearing this, the elderly couple glanced at her. The atmosphere immediately grew heavy. After a moment, Michael Young nodded. It's good for you to go back. Once you're back, focus on resting and taking care of the baby. You're already in your third trimester. Sarah Young was indeed almost 9 months pregnant now, her belly very large. It probably wouldn't be long before she gave birth, and this critical period required a relatively stable environment for her pregnancy. Clearly, Willow Creek Village was not suitable. Margaret suddenly slammed her bowl and chopsticks onto the table, her face filled with resentment. That Ethan Thompson is simply inhuman. You're carrying his child now, and he doesn't even bother to check on you. When the baby is born, if the Thompson family wants this child, I'll make them pay dearly. The more Margaret thought about it, the angrier she became, losing her appetite for Christmas dinner. Especially seeing her daughter alone and heavily pregnant, and thinking about her living alone in the big city with no one to care for her, she seethed with anger, wishing she could tear Ethan Thompson limb from limb. The Thompson family has gone too far. Our daughter is pregnant, and they haven't even asked about her, shown no concern at all. They're utterly heartless. Michael Young also angrily took a swig of liquor, feeling furious as he looked at his pitiful daughter being subjected to the pointing fingers of the Willow Creek residents. He had painstakingly made the decision to marry his precious daughter to Ethan Thompson back then. Now Ethan Thompson had betrayed his daughter so badly. How could he not be enraged? Seeing her parents sticking up for her, Sarah Young couldn't help but recall her own experiences over the past 6 months, living alone, heavily pregnant, and struggling. A wave of immense self-pity washed over her, and tears welled up in her eyes. Dad, Mom, once the baby is born, I'll demand a huge amount of child support from Ethan Thompson and that shrew Jessica Smith. They owe me this. If they want this child, it won't be that easy, Sarah Young pouted, feeling more and more aggrieved the more she thought about it. Thinking of other pregnant women, weren't they all meticulously cared for by their husbands, showered with concern? Only she was enduring hardship alone, heavily pregnant. Ethan Thompson hadn't even asked about her once. How could he act like a father at all? This deepened her hatred for Ethan Thompson. That's right. We absolutely cannot let them off easily. When the baby is born, we must demand a hefty sum from them, bleed them dry, ideally bankrupt them. Only then will my anger subside. Margaret felt that only by making the Thompson family pay a huge amount of money, bleed heavily, preferably to the point of losing their entire fortune, could she appease the hatred in her heart. All right, let's not talk about this for now. Let's eat. It's Christmas. Don't mention the Thompson family. It's bad luck. Michael Young interrupted the indignant mother and daughter. It was Christmas, a time to be happy. If they kept talking about the Thompson family, they wouldn't be able to celebrate the holiday or eat Christmas dinner. They'd be too full of anger. Yes, daughter, eat up. Don't mention that heartless Ethan Thompson, Margaret said comfortingly, picking up her bowl and chopsticks again as she looked at the aggrieved Sarah Young. Okay, Sarah Young nodded softly and picked up her chopsticks. However, faced with the sumptuous Christmas dinner, she had little appetite. Her mind was filled with images of Ethan Thompson and Jessica Smith, that cheating couple impossible to banish. Her current plight was entirely their fault, that cheating couple. If Ethan Thompson and Jessica Smith hadn't turned their act into reality and betrayed her, how could she have fallen into such a miserable state? It was all Ethan Thompson's fault, all Jessica Smith's fault. They had wronged her. It was all the fault of that cheating couple. The Christmas snow had melted, but the air was still bitingly cold. The New Year festivities weren't even over yet when Sarah Young left her parents' home. Pregnant and alone, she returned to Green Valley. She couldn't stand it there anymore. Even though it was the house she'd grown up in, she felt like there was no place for her now. Facing the town's gossip every day was utterly humiliating. And Margaret, after finishing up things at home, also went to Green Valley. She had no choice. Her daughter was about to give birth. Heavily pregnant, Sarah couldn't possibly manage alone. Margaret had to go take care of her. In contrast, Ethan Thompson and Jessica Smith stayed at his parents' home until the Lantern Festival before finally heading back, driving off on their return journey. Time flies, doesn't it? Another year gone just like that. On the way back, Jessica Smith gazed out the window, sighing wistfully. Yeah, the year went by way too fast. Ethan Thompson looked a little dazed. Another year had slipped by without him noticing, making him a year older. When we come back next year, it won't just be the two of us. Jessica Smith gently caressed her slightly swollen belly, her eyes full of adoration. Next New Year, it wouldn't just be her and Ethan Thompson. There would be a baby with them. Ethan Thompson glanced at her, knowing exactly what she meant. A happy smile touched his lips. Coming home for the New Year next year, they'd be returning as a family of 3. The thought that the baby would be born in just 7 months filled Ethan Thompson with anticipation. Oh, right? Shouldn't your ex-wife be due soon? Thinking about babies reminded Jessica Smith of her former best friend, Sarah Young. Calculating the time, Sarah should be close to giving birth. Should be soon, I guess. If you count the months, she's about 9 months pregnant now. Ethan Thompson nodded. Although he didn't like bringing up his ex-wife, she was still pregnant, and the child she carried might be his. So, he couldn't help but care about the baby in Sarah Young's belly. Do you think the baby she's carrying is really yours? Jessica Smith turned her head, her large, bright eyes looking at Ethan Thompson with curiosity. Who knows? I asked her to get a paternity test last time, but she refused. Now we just have to wait until the baby's born to find out if it's mine. Ethan Thompson looked resigned. He wanted to get the test done long ago, but Sarah Young had adamantly refused, leaving him no choice but to wait. Luckily, Sarah Young was due soon. The truth about whether the baby was his would be revealed shortly. I see. Well, never mind then. If she doesn't want to, we'll just wait for the baby to be born. The truth will come out eventually, right? Jessica Smith wasn't particularly bothered. She was already prepared for the possibility. Worst comes to worst, she'd help Ethan Thompson raise the child. Raising one child or raising two, what was the difference? Her family was wealthy. Supporting another child was hardly a burden. The couple chatted all the way back, soon arriving in Green Valley. At the manor, the housekeeper and the staff had already returned. They had cleaned the entire estate, inside and out, and even tidied up the flower garden, making the whole place look refreshed and new. After arriving back at the manor, Ethan Thompson, tired from the long drive, went upstairs to sleep. Jessica Smith, however, first praised the housekeeper and staff for their work, then handed out cash gift envelopes. Amidst cheerful laughter and chatter, Jessica Smith smiled, turned, and went up to their room on the second floor. Seeing Ethan Thompson lying on the bed, still awake, Jessica Smith started taking off her shoes. Ethan Thompson froze, a little confused. What are you doing? You know exactly what. Jessica Smith gave him a mischievous grin and walked step by step towards the large bed. Actually, after that one time with Ethan Thompson, they had found out the very next day that intimacy was advised against during the first and last trimesters of pregnancy. They had gotten the timing wrong back then, which led to their little escapade. So for the past 6 months, they hadn't done anything. Jessica Smith had been holding back for far too long. Jessica Smith, we looked it up online last time. You're not supposed to do it in the first trimester. Don't make the same mistake again, Ethan Thompson said urgently, trying to warn her off. 6 months have passed already. Jessica Smith threw back the covers and climbed onto the bed. For the next half an hour, it didn't matter how much Ethan Thompson protested. He was thoroughly taken advantage of by Jessica Smith. The following days passed peacefully and happily. As the days went by, the weather gradually grew warmer. It felt like the scent of spring was already in the air, and Jessica Smith's belly grew bigger day by day. It wasn't hugely noticeable, just a little larger, but the feeling of nurturing a new life brought immense happiness to the couple. Early April, on an otherwise quiet day. It was drizzling steadily, the sky overcast and gloomy. At the manor, Ethan Thompson, who was keeping Jessica Smith company as she rested during her pregnancy, received a call regarding his ex-wife. However, the call wasn't from Sarah Young herself, but from his former mother-in-law, Margaret. Ethan Thompson, my daughter's in labor. She's at the hospital now. If you still give a damn about your child, you get your ass over here right now. Margaret's voice crackled with barely suppressed fury, her tone demanding he rush to the hospital immediately. In labor? Ethan Thompson was stunned. He'd been so focused on Jessica Smith and her pregnancy that he hadn't realized how quickly time had passed. But he quickly snapped back to reality. Right? It was already April. Sarah Young was in her 3rd trimester. It was time. Okay, I understand. I'm on my way. Ethan Thompson didn't waste words and hung up immediately. Sarah Young's in labor. Jessica Smith, sitting beside him, had overheard the call. She looked surprised, clearly not expecting Sarah to give birth today. Okay, you stay here and rest. I'll go to the hospital and check on things. Ethan Thompson's expression was serious. He told Jessica Smith, then prepared to go upstairs, change out of his slippers, and head to the hospital. I'm going too. Jessica Smith grabbed his hand, pulling herself up from the sofa. She wanted to go see. She had been waiting for this day for a long time. But you're pregnant. You should stay home. Ethan Thompson frowned slightly. Although Jessica Smith was only 4 months along, her belly wasn't large, and her daily movements weren't restricted. Still, he worried. Margaret and Michael Young weren't exactly gentle people. What if an argument broke out at the hospital and Jessica got hurt? No, I want to go. Jessica Smith shook her head, her expression stubborn. All right then, Ethan Thompson sighed, resigned. I'll have a couple of security personnel come with us. They can stay by your side and protect you. With that settled, they quickly got ready and drove to the hospital. It was noon, and the rain was coming down harder. Thunder rumbled occasionally through the overcast sky. Soon, Ethan Thompson and Jessica Smith rushed to the hospital, arriving together at the maternity ward entrance. Margaret and Michael Young were already waiting anxiously by the door, their faces etched with worry. Sarah Young's close friend, Olivia, was also there. She wore exquisite makeup and carried a designer handbag. Beside her stood an unfamiliar man. Compared to Olivia, draped in designer labels, he looked quite ordinary, dressed in cheap clothes, with unremarkable features. Seeing Ethan Thompson hurry over, Michael Young and Margaret bristled with anger. Margaret, especially, had been stewing with resentment towards Ethan for a long time. Unable to hold back any longer, she stormed up to Ethan, pointing a finger right in his face. Ethan Thompson, you jerk! You finally decided to show up. If I hadn't called you today, would you even have bothered coming? Huh? My daughter is carrying your child. During this whole third trimester, you haven't visited her once. Do you have any conscience at all? You promised me you'd take good care of her. Is this how you take care of her? Like a drama queen, Margaret lunged forward, grabbing Ethan's collar, unleashing a torrent of accusations and curses. Let go. Ethan wasn't about to indulge her. He forcefully shook her hand off and stepped back, putting distance between himself and the hysterical woman. Michael Young strode over as well, pointing furiously at Ethan. Exactly, Ethan Thompson. All this time, my daughter has been living alone, heavily pregnant. Do you have any idea how hard it's been for her? She's carrying your child. How could you be so heartless? Are you even human? Ethan frowned, clearly annoyed. He shot back. What are you yelling about? We don't even know for sure if the child your daughter's carrying is mine. Point at me again, and don't blame me for what happens. Jessica Smith couldn't stand by any longer and stepped forward to defend her husband. That's right. We don't know if Sarah Young's baby is Ethan's. What right do you have to yell at him? Seeing Jessica Smith, Margaret trembled with rage, practically grinding her teeth. It's you. You're the homewrecker, seducing another woman's husband, causing my daughter so much misery, and you have a nerve to stand there making snide remarks. I'll tear you apart. Margaret lunged forward wildly, looking ready to rip Jessica Smith limb from limb. But the next moment, two burly security personnel stepped in, pushing her forcefully to the ground. Ah, how dare you hit me? You've gone too far. Is there no justice? Margaret lay on the floor, glaring venomously at Jessica Smith, her fury finding no outlet but loud wails. Honey, are you okay? Michael Young rushed to help her up, then fixed Ethan with a death stare. Ethan Thompson, you jerk. If I'd known you were this kind of person, I would never have let my daughter marry you. We're your elders, at least. And now you raise a hand against us? Looks like you think you're really something now, huh? Ethan Thompson stepped forward, looking coldly at the elderly couple. I only came today because this child might be mine. I don't want to argue with you. Let's just wait for the baby to be born. Everything will be clear then. You. Margaret pointed at him, gritting her teeth. Ethan Thompson. Fine. Just fine. My daughter has suffered so much through this pregnancy, and you dare to suspect the child isn't yours. All right. You remember what you said. When the baby is born, you'd better not come begging us for the child. She had spent so much time taking care of her pregnant daughter. It had been incredibly difficult. Her resentment towards Ethan had festered for a long time, and now he dared to be so arrogant in front of them, accusing her daughter of cheating. It was outrageous. She couldn't wait for the baby to be born, so Ethan would have to kneel and beg for their forgiveness. Ethan simply ignored Margaret's hateful glare, refusing to argue further. He just wanted to wait quietly for the baby's arrival and confirm if it was his. However, while he sought peace, others wouldn't grant it. Olivia, who had been standing nearby, now walked over. Ethan Thompson, I never thought you could be so heartless. Sarah Young is in her third trimester, and you haven't even visited her once? Do you have any idea how difficult it's been for Sarah alone all this time? A woman living alone while heavily pregnant, and you just abandon her and the baby? How could you? Olivia wore an expression of deep disappointment as she condemned Ethan's callousness. Having been pregnant 3 times herself, she knew very well how much care an expectant mother needed. But Ethan had completely neglected Sarah Young. He was utterly despicable. One could only imagine how desperate Sarah must have felt, living alone while heavily pregnant. This is between us. Stay out of it. Mind your own business. Ethan glanced at her, his expression impatient. This woman, popping up again. It irritated him. Just then, the man standing with Olivia also stepped forward, his eyes filled with disdain as he looked at Ethan. Buddy, you really have no heart. Your wife's pregnant, and you don't even take care of her? How can you live with yourself? Who are you? Ethan looked at the stranger who had suddenly appeared, feeling exasperated. Someone he didn't know, who didn't understand the situation, was jumping in to condemn him, acting all self-righteous. Olivia stepped forward, puffing out her chest. He's my husband, and he's much better than you. When I was pregnant, he took wonderful care of me. Unlike you, you heartless beast. She had given birth 3 times, and during each pregnancy, her husband had treated her like a princess, showering her with care. Compared to a faithless man like Ethan Thompson, he was leagues better. Hearing Olivia, Ethan glanced at the man, noting his cheap clothes and honest-looking face. For some reason, it was like looking at his former self. The feeling was uncanny, like seeing a reflection. Ethan addressed the man. You're her husband, right? Well, I suggest you get a paternity test for your kids, too. Any woman who hangs around with Sarah Young can't be much good. Hearing this, Olivia's eyes widened, and she immediately grew flustered. Ethan Thompson, how dare you say that? Isn't it enough that you suspect your own wife of cheating? Now you're accusing me too? You're really overstepping. Olivia looked slightly uncomfortable as she pointed indignantly at Ethan. Olivia's husband seemed to have complete faith in his wife's character, scoffing at Ethan's words. Ethan Thompson, is it? You should worry about yourself. I trust my own wife. Exactly. Just worry about yourself. Olivia clung to her husband's arm, glaring at Ethan with shared indignation. Fine. I can't be bothered arguing with you anymore. Let's just wait for Sarah Young to have the baby. Ethan didn't want to waste any more words on these people. He just wanted to wait quietly for the child's birth. Ethan Thompson, when that baby is born, you'll regret this. Margaret spat, pointing a final, hateful finger at Ethan before turning back to wait anxiously by the maternity ward entrance. Olivia huffed, then she and her husband also moved away, waiting further down a corridor. Outside the hospital, the rain was coming down harder now, a heavy downpour accompanied by rolling thunder. From the delivery room, Sarah's heart-wrenching screams could be heard intermittently. Every time the sound reached them, Linda and Michael couldn't help the worried expressions that crossed their faces. Then, they would turn and shoot venomous glares towards Ethan, standing not far away. In their eyes, their daughter's suffering was all Ethan's fault. Half an hour passed. The agonizing cries from the delivery room grew more frequent. Inside, several doctors were attending the birth. Sarah lay on the delivery bed, drenched in sweat, letting out continuous cries of pain. She felt as if she were being torn apart, an indescribable agony, so intense it almost made her faint. All she could do was grit her teeth, endure the torment, and keep pushing. Push harder, the baby's almost here. A doctor urged beside her. Ah! Sarah screamed, her face flushed crimson, hair plastered to her skin with sweat. She pushed with every ounce of strength she had, desperately trying to expel the child from her body. But the harder she pushed, the more intense the pain became. Ah! Ethan, I hate you! Sarah shrieked, her voice sharp, piercing, laced with a broken quality. Right now, her mind was filled with images of Ethan and Jessica. That cheating couple. Hatred consumed her. She blamed Ethan. She blamed Jessica. She blamed that cheating couple. Once this child was born, she would make them pay dearly. She would make that cheating couple compensate her 1,000, 10,000 times over for her suffering. At this moment, Sarah's hatred for Ethan and Jessica had reached its absolute peak. Meanwhile, outside the delivery room, as everyone waited anxiously, 2 figures hurried into the hospital and arrived at the doorway. Dad, Mom, what are you doing here? Ethan asked, slightly stunned to see the elderly couple arrive. Son, has Sarah given birth yet? Margaret immediately grabbed Ethan's hand, asking anxiously. Although she disliked Sarah, the child at her belly might carry their Thompson family bloodline, so she was still quite concerned. Not yet, Ethan replied, glancing at the tightly closed delivery room door. Seeing the late-arriving elderly couple, Linda and Michael, who had been waiting anxiously, felt their tempers flare instantly. William, Margaret, you finally decided to show up. Look at the fine son you raised, completely ignoring my daughter. Now that she's about to give birth, you suddenly know how to be worried? Linda, already a drama queen, stormed over aggressively. She had been the one to call Ethan's parents. After all, this child belonged to their Thompson family. How could William and Margaret not be present? Looking at her former in-laws now, Linda simmered with rage. Her daughter had gone through a difficult pregnancy, carrying a child for their Thompson family, and Ethan hadn't cared one bit. Now, she just wanted to demand how these old folks had raised their son to be so heartless. Linda, what are you shouting for? We don't even know if this child is ours, from the Thompson family. Yet, Margaret retorted, not one to back down, stepping forward to confront her. Exactly. We haven't confirmed if this child is a Thompson yet. What are you making such a fuss about? William also stepped up, presenting a united front against Linda. Fine, fine. You really are all the same, aren't you? A whole family of heartless people. My daughter worked so hard, carrying and delivering a baby for your Thompson family, and you dare doubt her? Just wait until the baby is born. Don't you dare regret it then. Linda was furious, glaring daggers at Ethan's family. Michael, who had been bottling up his anger, finally couldn't hold back anymore. He stepped forward, pointing a finger right at William's nose, and started yelling. William, your son Ethan might be irresponsible, but how can you be so unreasonable too? My daughter is in there giving birth right now. Who is she doing it for, if not for your Ethan? And you all dare to doubt my daughter. I must have been blind to marry my daughter into your family. Your whole family is heartless. You all deserve to die. William wasn't intimidated. He stated directly, Michael, Linda, the baby isn't even born yet. You'd better watch your mouth. Our Ethan hasn't wronged your daughter. That's right. My son was so good to your daughter. She was the one who insisted on the divorce. Whose fault is that? Margaret added, puffing out her chest and retorting righteously. You're all heartless. Just wait. After my daughter gives birth, you'd better not regret it. Don't come begging us for the child then. Linda felt like her lungs would explode with anger, her glare towards Ethan's family murderous. Just then, the sound of a baby crying suddenly erupted from the delivery room. The cry was tiny but loud, echoing down the hallway, carrying far. The baby's born. It's born. Linda and Michael were instantly distracted. They had no time to argue with Ethan's family anymore and turned, rushing towards the delivery room. Ethan and Jessica, along with William, Margaret, and even the two security personnel who had accompanied them, all perked up instantly. They all moved closer towards the delivery room. Olivia and her husband, who had been waiting patiently in the corridor, also came alive with anticipation, quickly approaching the delivery room door. About 10 people crowded around the entrance. Ethan, Jessica whispered, feeling inexplicably nervous, do you think this baby is really yours? Before Ethan could answer, Linda, unable to stomach it, snapped, of course it's his. Whose else could it be? Exactly. Sarah's baby is definitely Ethan's. Olivia chimed in supportively from the side. Jessica frowned, looking unconvinced. The baby's not even out yet. What's the rush? Linda glared at her, gritting her teeth in frustration, but unable to do much else. She spat out defiantly. Just wait. You'd better not come begging our family for the baby later. See if you don't regret it. Just as Linda finished speaking, the delivery room door opened. A nurse emerged, holding a newborn baby in her arms. It's out. The baby's out. What does the baby look like? Let me see. Nurse, quickly, let me see. Everyone surged forward eagerly, wanting to get a glimpse of the newly born child. 3 p.m. The downpour continued relentlessly. Inside the hospital, a young nurse emerged from the delivery room, cradling a newborn. Nurse, let me see the baby. What does the baby look like? Let me see. Nurse, let me see first. Everyone swarmed the delivery room door, eager to get the first glimpse of the child Sarah had just delivered. The young nurse wore a strange expression. She stepped forward, holding the infant up for everyone to see. The next moment, everyone saw the baby. And the instant they saw it, they were completely floored. The infant in the nurse's arms was, unmistakably, a biracial baby. Yes, it was actually a biracial baby. It felt like a bolt from the blue, striking everyone present, leaving them utterly reeling from the shock. They were all stunned. It's black. Olivia was the first to speak, her eyes wide with disbelief. It wasn't just her. Everyone there was thunderstruck. No one had ever imagined that Sarah would give birth to a biracial baby. How could it be black? Jessica's mouth fell open, wide enough to fit an egg, her face a mask of astonishment. She knew Sarah's private life was messy, but she never imagined this messy. Holy crap, it's really a biracial child? Even the security personnel, standing nearby, were taken aback, their professional masks slipping. While the others were still reeling, Linda, snapping back to reality, seemed unable to accept the fact, shaking her head frantically. No, impossible. How could it be black? Nurse, you must have the wrong baby. This can't be my daughter's child. Impossible. How could her daughter possibly give birth to a biracial child? The nurse must have made a mistake. Yes, that had to be it. Linda clung to that sliver of hope, grabbing the nurse, desperately seeking confirmation. All eyes turned to the nurse, waiting for her answer. Had she really brought out the wrong baby? After all, Sarah having a biracial baby was just too outrageous. The young nurse pursed her lips, looking impatient. Yours was the only delivery today. How could I possibly mix them up? This is your grandson. Hearing this, the realization hit everyone. This really was Sarah's baby. Well, damn, she'd actually delivered a biracial baby, which meant there was no way Ethan could be the father. Margaret couldn't help but laugh. Looking at the dumbfounded expressions on Linda and Michael's faces, she began to taunt. Linda, you certainly raised a fine daughter, didn't you? Are you still going to claim this child belongs to our Ethan? Margaret clearly remembered how arrogant Linda had been before the baby was born. But now, with the child revealed, all that arrogance had vanished. Margaret felt utterly triumphant. William, usually quiet, couldn't resist speaking up now either, his face etched with disgust. That's right, Michael. Are you two still claiming this child is part of the Thompson family? Faced with the elderly couple's cutting remarks, Linda and Michael's faces flushed crimson, but they were utterly speechless. Just moments ago, they had been arrogantly making threats, saying that once the baby was born, they'd make Ethan's family kneel and beg for forgiveness. But now, their daughter had given birth to a biracial baby. It felt like a sharp slap in the face, their cheeks burning with shame. Linda, you love to shout, don't you? Why so quiet now? Cat got your tongue? Seeing Linda's mortified expression, Margaret had no intention of letting her off the hook and continued her taunts. You. Linda stared at Margaret, wanting to retort, but finding no words. Their earlier arrogance stemmed from the certainty that the child was Ethan's. That's why they felt so justified in assuming Ethan had wronged their daughter and had raged so righteously at his family. But now, with this biracial child clearly not Ethan's, they couldn't stand their ground anymore. Margaret stepped forward, continuing her imperious taunting. Linda, didn't you insist just moments ago that this child belonged to the Thompson family? Look at this child now. Do you still think he belongs to the Thompson family? And weren't you going to make us regret it? Why aren't you saying that now? Weren't you going to make us kneel and beg you? Why aren't you saying that now? Linda stammered, unable to answer, her eyes darting away, not daring to meet Margaret's gaze. Seeing Linda berated into silence, Margaret, who had been bottling up her anger, felt an incredible sense of satisfaction wash over her. She then turned to Michael, who had been standing silently nearby. And you, Michael, you were quite fierce earlier, weren't you? What happened? Lost your voice too. Michael looked at the aggressive Margaret, lowered his head in shame, and couldn't utter a single word. Meanwhile, as Margaret laid into Michael and Linda, Jessica, nursing her own simmering resentment, turned to Olivia. Crossing her arms, she asked with a smug expression, Olivia, you love making noise, don't you? Why so quiet now? Not enjoying this. She'd long disliked that obnoxious woman, Olivia, who always acted like a buffoon, popping up just to be sickening. Now that the baby was born, and a biracial baby at that, Jessica wasn't going to miss this chance to vent her frustration and get back at her. She definitely wouldn't let this woman off easily. Olivia looked at Jessica, her expression one of deep embarrassment. She wanted to argue back, but had no words. Before today, she considered the possibility that the child might not be Ethan's. But she had never, ever imagined Sarah would give birth to a biracial baby. Now, anything she said would sound weak, utterly ridiculous. Behind Olivia, her husband also looked deeply ashamed. Just earlier, he had been taking the moral high ground, accusing Ethan of failing in his duties as a father and husband. But now, Sarah had delivered a biracial baby. It felt like a slap in the face, leaving him feeling utterly humiliated, wanting the ground to swallow him whole. Jessica watched Olivia and her husband's awkward state, stepping closer, one step at a time. Olivia, she continued, didn't you always stick up for Sarah? Weren't you always saying this baby was Ethan's? Why so silent now? Go on, say it. You. Olivia's lips pressed tightly together. Facing the slowly advancing Jessica, she was forced to step back, her eyes darting away, unable to meet Jessica's gaze. Olivia, why aren't you talking now? Jessica pressed. Honestly, I preferred you when you were strutting around all high and mighty. What happened to that arrogance? Bring it back. You need to perk up. Jessica twisted the knife. Olivia, isn't Sarah your BFF? You always defended her. Why aren't you defending her now? Say something. Don't be mute. Olivia, you used to love yapping before, didn't you? What's wrong today? Go on, yap. I just love hearing you yap. Jessica's words, dripping with honeyed sarcasm, were almost sickeningly sweet as she relentlessly laid into Sarah. Cornered, with nowhere left to run, Olivia's face flushed crimson, pushed to her breaking point. Throwing her head back with the desperation of someone with nothing left to lose, she shrieked hysterically at Jessica. "Don't you get smug, Jessica? So what if the baby isn't Ethan's?" Setting aside the facts for a moment, are you saying Ethan bears no fault in this? Olivia then whirled on Ethan, her eyes spitting venom as she unleashed a torrent of abuse. "And you, Ethan, Sarah went through hell giving birth, and all you care about is that this baby isn't yours? You're absolutely heartless. Is biology really that important? If you truly loved Sarah, you wouldn't give a damn whose baby it is." Pushed past her limit, Olivia snapped like a cornered animal. Ethan and Jessica stared dumbfounded. They hadn't expected Olivia to spout such utterly twisted logic. Listen to that. Is she even speaking like a rational person? Typical Valley girl. It's always someone else's fault. She could do no wrong. But Olivia failed to notice her husband standing beside her, staring with utter disbelief. His eyes held an unfamiliarity, as if looking at a complete stranger. He seemed stunned that the woman he'd been married to for years could say something so warped. Seeing Olivia acting like a rabid animal, Ethan swiftly pulled the pregnant Jessica behind him protectively. "Can't let her get bitten." Then, he stepped forward, his gaze cold as ice as he looked at Olivia. "Olivia, Sarah turned out this way precisely because she has a BFF like you. You're two peas in a pod. Talking to idiots like you is a complete waste of my time." Ethan couldn't be bothered engaging with a lunatic anymore. Trying to reason with such a prime example of a Valley girl was like talking to a brick wall, a complete waste of breath. Ethan turned, pulling Jessica further away, just in case Olivia decided to do something desperate in her cornered state. Hurting Jessica was the last thing he wanted. Meanwhile, Margaret and William, having thoroughly vented their spleen with cutting remarks aimed at Michael and Linda, finally felt they'd had their fill. The elderly couple turned and rejoined Ethan, expressions of smug satisfaction on their faces. Margaret patted Ethan's shoulder. "Let's go, son. Time to head home. There's nothing left for us here." "Okay, Mom," Ethan agreed. With that, the family turned to leave. However, seeing them leave, Linda clearly wasn't ready to give up. Eyes red-rimmed, she lunged forward, roaring at their retreating backs. "Margaret, William, Ethan, don't you dare leave. So what if my daughter cheated? Is your precious Ethan completely blameless? If he had made my daughter happy, would she have strayed? I don't care. Your family will compensate my daughter for her suffering today." Linda had completely lost it, throwing all reason to the wind. Yes, her daughter had cheated and born a biracial baby. But wasn't Ethan also at fault? He had betrayed her daughter too. He'd shacked up with that homewrecker, Jessica. That was betrayal too. Why should her daughter take all the blame? "Compensate your daughter?" Margaret turned back, looking at Linda as if she were observing a particularly pathetic clown. "Are you joking, Linda?" Linda's face contorted with indignation. "Don't you be so smug, Margaret. My daughter cheated, but your Ethan shares the blame. Haven't you ever heard it takes two to tango? When something like this happens, both husband and wife bear responsibility." Smack! Before Linda could finish her sentence, Margaret swung her hand, connecting sharply with Linda's face. The crisp sound echoed loudly in the corridor. Linda froze, stunned, staring at Margaret with wide, disbelieving eyes. A small, satisfied smile touched Margaret's lips. "See? Apparently, it only takes one hand to clap after all." With that, she turned and walked away with Ethan and William. Only after the others were some distance away did Linda snap back to reality. She let out a hysterical shriek, pointing furiously at their retreating figures. "Margaret, how dare you hit me? How dare you? Get back here, you bitch. I'll tear you apart. Aarg, I'm going to explode." Michael, cradling his biracial grandson, couldn't bear listening any longer. He walked over, advising wearily, "That's enough, Linda. Stop shouting. Just let it go." Linda whirled on her husband, glaring daggers at him. "Michael, you useless coward. Margaret was tearing into us, and you didn't say a single word. You let me, a woman, take the heat? What kind of man are you?" Michael sighed, his expression etched with deep weariness. "Linda, before, I truly believed Ethan had wronged our daughter. That's why I was so against him. But now, with this baby, it's clear our daughter wronged him. What am I supposed to say?" Before the baby arrived, Michael's heart ached watching his pregnant daughter struggle alone, her belly swollen. His resentment towards Ethan had festered, reaching its peak. He had always assumed the baby was Ethan's, always believed his precious daughter couldn't possibly be in the wrong. But the baby's arrival shattered that illusion. The child wasn't Ethan's. His beloved daughter had deceived him. In an instant, his animosity towards Ethan evaporated, replaced even by a pang of guilt. Now, he could only conclude that this was all his daughter's fault. She had brought this entirely upon herself. But Linda refused to see right or wrong. Her only instinct was to defend her daughter. "Michael, have you forgotten all the humiliation our daughter endured? Living alone, pregnant, being whispered about, and judged by everyone in the village?" "But the baby isn't Ethan's," Michael repeated wearily. "So what?" Linda shot back. "Even if the baby isn't his, is Ethan completely faultless? Does he bear no blame at all? Our daughter may have cheated, but she never wanted a divorce. She kept trying to save the marriage. It was Ethan who took up with another woman. Ethan betrayed her. He betrayed their marriage." Linda had completely abandoned reason, conveniently ignoring all of her daughter's transgressions. Instead, she fixated on finding fault with Ethan, determined to shift all the blame onto his shoulders. Seeing her irrational state, Michael knew better than to argue. Linda was livid. Nothing he said would get through to her now. After leaving the hospital, Ethan led his family to the parking garage. Opening the car door, Ethan helped Jessica inside before getting into the driver's seat himself. He fastened his seatbelt, ready to drive his family back to the manor. That felt good today. I've hated that crazy woman Linda for ages, and today I finally got some payback. In the back seat, Margaret, having just settled in, wore an expression of deep satisfaction. Before the baby was born, Linda was always lording it over her, using the child to show off, acting so smug. But after the birth, that madwoman just wilted like an eggplant hit by frost. Before leaving, Margaret had even slapped Linda. Thinking back on it now, the feeling was incredibly gratifying. She wanted to smack Linda for a long time, and today, her wish had finally come true. William sat beside her, his expression still somewhat stunned. "Before we came today, I never would have believed in a million years that Sarah would give birth to a biracial child." Even now, he couldn't quite calm down. As just plain ordinary folks, they hadn't even seen many foreigners in their lives. He never imagined his former daughter-in-law would actually have a black child, and it almost became his grandson. For him, this was utterly mind-blowing. Hearing this, Margaret's expression also grew complex, and she couldn't help but sigh softly. "Yeah, before we came today, I really thought that child was a Thompson grandchild. Who knew Sarah would pull something like this, having a biracial child? A foreigner. I've only ever seen one in my entire life, and he almost became my grandson. Who can you even tell about something like this?" Hearing this from the passenger seat, Jessica couldn't hold back a chuckle, turning to look at the old folks. "Dad, Mom, why don't you consider moving to Green Valley to live with us? That way, you'll have more chances to see foreigners." Green Valley was a decent-sized city. You could occasionally see foreigners there. The old folks had lived in the countryside their whole lives. Foreigners were too remote a concept for them, usually only seen on TV. "We're not coming. Living in the countryside is much better. We can farm, raise chickens, the air is good. Living in the city is too much trouble. Everything costs money." Margaret immediately shook her head, refusing the suggestion with unusual firmness. They were used to rural life and couldn't adjust to the big city. It would be impossible for them to adapt. "All right then." Jessica didn't insist. She had suggested it several times before, wanting the old folks to move to Green Valley and enjoy a comfortable life, but they always refused. She could only let them be. Just then, William sighed again, sounding a bit regretful. I came today thinking I'd finally get to hold a grandchild, and instead, I end up with a black child. What kind of situation is this?" William looked helpless and disappointed. He had longed to hold a grandchild. Before coming, he had believed the baby would be of Thompson blood, and his wish would finally come true. Instead, a black child appeared, completely stunning him and dashing his hopes. Margaret nudged him, saying irritably, "What are you rushing for? It's better this child isn't Thompson. It saves us from getting entangled with the young family later. If you want a grandchild, isn't Jessica already pregnant? In another 6 months, the baby will be here. You can hold him all day long then." In her view, it was better that Sarah's child wasn't a Thompson. It made things cleaner. This way, they would have absolutely no ties to the young family in the future. As for a grandchild, Jessica was already expecting. They would have one sooner or later. What was the rush? Hearing this, William's sense of loss finally dissipated. "You have a point there. Dad, Mom, don't worry. I'll definitely give you a healthy grandson," Jessica said, turning to look at the old folks with a smile. Now that it was confirmed Sarah's child wasn't Ethan's, Jessica couldn't be happier. Although she had mentally prepared herself to raise Ethan's child, it ultimately wouldn't have been her own. Raising him would have felt somewhat awkward. Now it was settled. She didn't have to. Furthermore, Sarah could no longer use the child as leverage, and she had absolutely no connection to Ethan anymore. This meant she and Ethan could live their lives happily together. Sarah was no longer a part of their lives. Every time she thought about this, her mood soared. Good. Jessica, dear, you just focus on taking care of yourself during the pregnancy. If anything comes up, just order Ethan around. If he dares disobey you, I'll break his legs. Margaret looked at Jessica with a face full of loving affection, her gaze growing increasingly satisfied. Okay, Mum, Jessica replied with a playful smile, agreeing cheerfully. Meanwhile, Ethan, who was driving, listened to his family's happy chatter, a faint sense of bliss filling his heart. However, when he thought of Sarah, who had just given birth today, his feelings became complicated. He knew Sarah flirted with others on social media before, but he never imagined she played around that much. Recalling how devoted he used to be to Sarah, Ethan once again felt profoundly that his past self had been a total jerk. At the same time, he felt immense relief. Relief that Sarah had initiated the divorce. Otherwise, right now, he would have ended up with a biracial child. Of course, what he felt most grateful for was meeting Jessica. During the darkest time of his life, it was Jessica who pulled him out of the mire. Jessica who brought him a warmth he had never experienced before, and Jessica who gave him the happy marriage he had always longed for. Jessica was like a beam of light, illuminating his entire world. Thinking this, he couldn't help turning his head to look at Jessica's stunning profile. His gaze was incredibly gentle, filled with adoration. As if sensing his stare, Jessica turned to look at Ethan, her expression slightly puzzled. What's wrong? Nothing. Just thinking. You look especially beautiful today, Ethan said, a smile touching the corners of his lips. When do I not look beautiful? I look beautiful every day, okay? Jessica pouted slightly, unable to hide a touch of playful arrogance. Yes. You're the most beautiful. The most beautiful in the whole world. Ethan chuckled helplessly, indulging her compliment before focusing back on driving. You don't need to tell me that. Jessica beamed, utterly delighted by the praise. Her eyes sparkled, and the smile on her lips couldn't be contained. In the back seat, the old folks watched the affectionate young couple, both revealing gratified smiles. The downpour lasted into the evening. Outside the hospital room, the rain pattered relentlessly, as if it would never cease. Inside, Sarah, having given birth, had been brought back much earlier. She had fainted right after the baby was born and hadn't woken up since. Consequently, she still hadn't seen her own child. At this moment, Michael and Linda sat by the bedside, gazing at their unconscious daughter. Neither spoke. Olivia hadn't left either. She remained by the bed. As for her husband, he had left long ago, departing without even a word to her. Previously, the shrewish Olivia would certainly have thrown a tantrum. But now, Olivia couldn't be bothered with such details. Her mind was completely consumed by the black baby Sarah had given birth to. She often hung out with Sarah. Honestly, she herself had been with several black men, but she was always careful, using condoms every time. Unlike Sarah, who never used condoms and ended up having a black child directly. Olivia was now trying hard to recall exactly when Sarah could have conceived. But in her memory, Sarah didn't seem to have had any deep involvement with black men. How could she have ended up pregnant with a black baby? It baffled her completely. Meanwhile, besides them, there were 3 other postpartum mothers in the room, along with many family members there for support. These people looked at Linda's group with rather peculiar expressions. Their gazes, especially towards Sarah on the bed, carried a hint of disdain and disgust. The news that Sarah had given birth to a black child today had already spread throughout the hospital. After all, having a black child was sensational enough. To top it off, when the baby was born, the Thompson family and the Young family had engaged in a public meltdown right there in the hospital, causing the incident to spread like wildfire. Many nurses and patients, upon hearing about it, specifically came to this room to gawk. These onlookers all wanted to see this newborn black child, and the woman who gave birth to it. Who was she? What did she look like? This made their room exceptionally lively, with gawkers constantly crowding the doorway. Their room had practically become the hospital's must-see attraction, like a circus sideshow. Some passers-by weren't satisfied just looking from the doorway. They came right into the room, even leaning in for a closer look. It was simply outrageous. This made Michael, Linda, and even Olivia feel extremely embarrassed. It was utterly humiliating, especially Michael. Ever since confirming the child was Sarah's, Linda hadn't even wanted to hold it, as if this biracial child wasn't her grandchild but a hot potato. The baby could only be cared for by Michael. Feeling the strange looks from others, Michael felt like he was sitting on pins and needles, overwhelmed with a sense of shame. He had lived an upright life, yet at this moment, he felt too ashamed to face anyone. Soon, a few more onlookers appeared at the door, crowding the entrance, craning their necks to peek inside. Did you hear? Someone in this room had a black child. So explosive. Which one is it? Let me see. Where's the black child? Whoa, I see it. It's the one that old man is holding. Dark skin, really, really dark. It really is a black child. Did you see? That woman lying there sleeping. She's the one who gave birth to the black child. Wow, she's quite pretty, huh? To think she plays around like that. At the doorway, the gawkers whispered amongst themselves. The voices weren't loud, but everyone in the room could hear them. Hearing these whispers, even though they'd heard them many times already, Linda and Michael couldn't help but lower their heads, seemingly wanting to hide their faces. As for Olivia, whenever people came to stare, she would stand further away, pretending to be an unrelated bystander. After all, in such a mortifying situation, there was no need for her to be front and center. Just then, Sarah, lying on the bed, finally began to stir. She slowly opened her eyes, the bright ceiling tiles filling her vision. She paused for a moment, then realized she was no longer in the delivery room. She must have been moved back to the ward. Dad, Mom, Sarah forced herself to sit up, looking at her parents sitting by the bed. She called out weakly. Hearing her voice, Olivia, Linda, and Michael all looked up, seeing Sarah awake. Their expressions held a trace of surprise. Daughter, you're awake? Linda sat up straighter and asked, Mom, where's my baby? Where's my child? Sarah's face was still pale, clearly weak, but her first question was about her baby. Right now, nothing seemed more important than this child. This child was now her greatest leverage. Ethan and Jessica, that cheating couple, had driven her to this state. She hated them to death. At this moment, all she wanted was to use this child to properly extort that cheating couple, make them compensate her 1,000, 10,000 times over. She would definitely make them pay 1,000, 10,000 times the price. However, hearing her immediately ask about the baby, the expression on Linda's face froze instantly. She was momentarily speechless. Michael also froze, unsure what to say. Standing nearby, Olivia opened her mouth, seeming to want to explain the situation, but found it difficult to speak. And at this very moment, the other people in the room, as well as the onlookers crowding the doorway, watched this scene with keen interest. Seeing her parents remain silent, a sense of foreboding rose in Sarah's heart. Just then, she saw the baby Michael was holding, sitting behind Linda. Dad, is that my baby you're holding? Quick, let me see. Sarah looked desperate. Right now, this child was her only hope. She was counting on this baby to stage a comeback against Ethan and Jessica. Michael hesitated for a moment, then stepped forward and handed the child to his daughter. Sarah carefully took the baby, holding it gently in her arms. However, when she looked down at the infant in the swaddling clothes, her eyes instantly widened. In that moment, she was completely stunned. The child in her arms was clearly a black child with dark skin. Instantly, she felt like the sky was falling. Her child was actually a black child. This meant that all her hopes were shattered. No, no, no. This isn't my baby. Mom, whose baby is this? Sarah shook her head frantically, seemingly unable to believe it, looking up at Linda for confirmation. This must be someone else's baby. Yes, this couldn't possibly be her child. Sarah desperately tried to console herself inwardly, while grabbing Linda's hand, repeatedly seeking validation. However, Linda simply lowered her head, saying nothing. Although she didn't want to tell her daughter the cruel truth, her silence gave Sarah the answer. Sarah froze, utterly unwilling to believe it. No, this isn't my child. Mom, this isn't my child, right? Mom, say something. Father, tell me, this isn't my baby, right? Say something. Hurry up and say something. Seeing Linda remain silent, the desperate Sarah turned to Michael, nearly frantic with anxiety. Right now, how she wished someone, anyone, would step forward and tell her this wasn't her child. Just then, Olivia stepped forward. She hesitated for a moment, but still spoke the truth. Sarah, stop asking. This is your baby. Boom. Hearing those words felt like a thunderbolt crashing down inside Sarah's mind. In an instant, it obliterated every last shred of hope she possessed. Sarah completely shut down, sinking into a stupor. She sat there foolishly on the bed, cradling the newborn black child in her arms. Puffed. Elsewhere in the hospital room, others couldn't suppress their snickers at the sight. And outside the room, the crowd of onlookers couldn't hold back their laughter either. The sounds were incredibly grating, causing Linda, Michael and Olivia to flush with shame, instinctively lowering their heads. They felt utterly mortified. Meanwhile, Sarah remained in her daze, apparently still trying to process the fact that she had given birth to a black child. No, no, no. This isn't my baby. It's not. After a moment, Sarah let out a hysterical shriek. She absolutely refused to accept that she had given birth to a black child. With this black child, it meant she could never get her revenge on Ethan and Jessica, that cheating couple. The child support she had been counting on was completely out of the question. Not only that, but with this child, finding another partner in the future? Impossible. After all, what man would accept a divorced woman with a black child, especially since she likely couldn't even have more children? Any man who became her fallback option would be a laughingstock for the rest of his life. At this moment, Sarah felt her entire future turn pitch black, and this black child would be the biggest stain on her life. A stain that could never, ever be erased. How could she possibly accept such a reality? This isn't my baby. It's not. I don't have a child like this. I don't. As Sarah spoke, tears streamed down her face like pearls falling from a broken necklace, relentlessly pouring down. She abruptly shoved the baby into Linda's arms and frantically scrambled backward on the bed, as if trying to physically distance herself from the infant to escape the cruel truth. Sigh. Linda looked down at the baby in her arms and sighed, her expression etched with deep helplessness. By now, the baby was frightened and crying. She glanced back at her daughter, who seemed to have completely lost her mind and felt utterly lost about what to do. This isn't my baby. This isn't my baby. I don't have a child like this. My baby is Ethan's. I was going to get child support from him. Sarah sat huddled on the hospital bed, hugging her knees, sobbing and muttering deliriously, the picture of utter despair. Just then, Olivia sat down on the edge of the bed beside her. She gently patted Sarah's shoulder and offered a soft word of comfort. Sarah, you need to calm down. Just try to accept it. Sarah lifted her head to look at Olivia, and tears burst forth anew, like a dam breaking, flooding down her cheeks. Olivia, what am I going to do? How could I have a baby like this? What about my future? Sob, she felt as if all hope for living was gone, leaving her completely, devastatingly helpless. Sigh. Olivia sighed again. After a moment's thought, she said, Sarah, try your best to remember. Who is this child's father? See if you can find him. If you can, you might be able to salvage something from this. Hearing this, a flicker of desperate hope ignited in Michael and Linda. They both immediately looked toward Sarah, anxious to hear who the baby's biological father really was. However, upon hearing Olivia's words, Sarah only cried harder. It's useless. The baby's father. He can't be found. Her face was a mask of despair. The truth was, the moment she'd laid eyes on the baby, she had instantly remembered. Before she got pregnant, during a chance encounter, she had a one-night stand with a black man. It was the only time she had ever been intimate with a black person. At the time, she had simply been curious, wanting to experience deep cultural exchange with a foreigner. That night, the man had told her he was heading back to his home country overseas the very next day. They hadn't exchanged any contact information. Where on earth was she supposed to find him now? What do you mean you can't find him? Daughter, isn't the baby's father here in Green Valley? Linda asked urgently. Sarah looked at her mother, her face streaked with tears. Mom, the baby's father, he already went back overseas. Are you telling me I should take the baby and fly overseas to find him? As soon as those words were out, Linda, Olivia, and Michael's eyes widened in shock. In that instant, they understood the depth of Sarah's despair. Puffed inside the room, the onlookers couldn't help but burst out laughing again. Ha! I can't take it anymore. Ha! At the doorway, some netizens lost all control, squealing with laughter. Hey miss, it's okay. I'll help chip in for your plane ticket so you can find the baby's father. Someone in the crowd, clearly enjoying the drama, shouted out. Count me in. I'll donate money too. Help you pay for the trip to find the daddy overseas. Ha! Me too. I'll put in $5. I'll give 20. Ha! This is killing me. I'll give 200. Miss, I'm genuinely trying to help you. Outside the door, the group of onlookers were doubled over, howling with laughter, tears streaming down their faces. Listening to them, Sarah cried even louder. The sounds were excruciatingly sharp to Olivia, Michael, and Linda. Get out. All of you get the hell out. The fiery-tempered Linda finally exploded. All the suppressed fury within her erupted at once. She thrust the baby into Michael's arms and charged towards the doorway like a mad dog. I'll tear you apart. You're making me furious. Whoa, run. Seeing Linda's terrifying advance, The crowd scattered in an instant. Linda didn't manage to grab anyone, leaving her rage simmering with no outlet. She could only stand at the doorway, ranting and raving like a drama queen. "Get lost, you jerks! Get as far away from here as you possibly can. If any of you ever come back to laugh at my daughter again, don't blame me for getting rough." Inside the room, Michael watched Linda, who was still spewing curses like a madwoman at the door. He looked down at the black grandchild nestled in his arms. Finally, his gaze fell upon his daughter, sitting on the bed, head buried in her hands, sobbing hysterically. The entire scene filled him with a profound, crushing sense of powerlessness. What terrible fortune is this? At 9 o'clock in the evening, the day-long rain finally stopped. The clouds dispersed from the night sky, revealing countless stars and a bright, clear moon. Inside the room, Ethan stood by the window, gazing at the moonlit scene outside, feeling rather emotional. The events of the day had hit him hard. Even now, he hadn't fully processed it. He had considered that Sarah's child might not be his, but he had never imagined she could actually give birth to a biracial child. "The old me. I was too good to her back then," Ethan murmured softly. Seeing his once glamorous ex-wife, now fallen so low, filled him with a sense of how much things had changed. But then, a carefree smile touched his lips. She was awful before, but now, after having this child, her life is bound to be difficult. He paused. "Still, whatever happens to her from now on has absolutely nothing to do with me." It was predictable. Sarah, burdened with a biracial baby, was destined for a tough life, sure to face constant judgment and gossip. But he was married to Jessica Smith now, and she was pregnant too. His future was set to be happy. "What are you looking at over there? Come to bed," Jessica Smith called out as she emerged from the bathroom, finding him standing by the window, lost in thought. Ethan turned and saw her. Jessica stood there gracefully under the warm yellow light, dressed in pajamas that accentuated her enchanting curves. Her fair, delicate face was stunningly beautiful. A wave of happiness washed over Ethan. Suddenly, it felt like leaving Sarah and marrying Jessica Smith was a true blessing. "Oh, coming," Ethan replied, a gentle smile on his face. He watched as Jessica walked to the bed and slowly lay down. Then, he turned, closed the window, drew the curtains, and joined her on the bed. "Feels like your belly got a bit bigger today. Did the baby grow a little?" Ethan gently rested his head on Jessica's stomach, listening intently for any movement. Right now, Jessica and the baby inside her were the most important things in the world to him. As for Sarah, she was firmly in the past. Jessica looked at him, exasperated. "No way. It's the same size as yesterday, okay? All right, maybe it's just my imagination," Ethan conceded, lifting his head and lying down beside her. Jessica snuggled into his arms, wrapping her arms around him like a little kitten. She rested her head against his chest, nuzzling him occasionally. She didn't know why, but ever since getting pregnant, she felt the urge to cling to Ethan constantly. Only this closeness gave her a sense of security and peace. Ethan stroked her head dotingly. Having Jessica beside him made him feel exceptionally secure too. Suddenly, Jessica seemed to remember something. She lifted her head from his chest, her large, watery eyes blinking. "Hey, I asked you to think of names for our baby. It's been 2 weeks. Have you decided yet?" Jessica recalled how Ethan had promised, right after she got pregnant, to choose names before the baby arrived. Just in case, he was supposed to come up with 2 names, one for a boy, one for a girl, so they'd be prepared either way. Well, Ethan scratched his head, answering honestly, "I've been thinking about it constantly, but I've only come up with a few girl names. Haven't thought of a single boy name yet. So, tell me, what girl names did you think of?" Jessica's eyes lit up with anticipation. "Just 4 or 5. One is Sophia Thompson Yao Yao. Another is Sophia Thompson Ching Chio, Sophia Thompson Xiaogua, and there's also Sophia Thompson Jessica Smith." Jessica's mouth twitched slightly. "These are the names you spent 2 weeks thinking about." She felt a bit speechless. The names weren't terrible, but they seemed so plain, so common. Especially the last one, which was clearly just her name tacked onto Ethan's surname. Out of all of them, she thought, only Sophia Thompson Xiao Gua sounded kind of cute and interesting, almost like something tasty. Ethan looked embarrassed. Okay, I admit I'm not really great at naming kids. The baby isn't even here yet. Let me think some more, and I'll run the good ones by you when I have them." "All right then," Jessica said, burying her head back in his chest and giving it a contented nuzzle. A moment later, Jessica thought of something else and couldn't help lifting her head to look at him again. "Honey, do you think Sarah will ever come looking for you again?" Even though Sarah had given birth to a biracial child today, proving it had nothing to do with Ethan, Jessica remembered Sarah's unreasonable personality. Someone like her, a top-tier, ultimate Valley Girl type, couldn't be judged by normal logic. Ethan chuckled dismissively. Don't worry about it. After having this biracial child, how could she possibly have the nerve to find me? Even if she did, she'd just be humiliating herself. What are you afraid of? Jessica considered it and nodded lightly. You're right. If she dares to show up, I'll expose everything about her on social media. She'll be too ashamed to show her face ever again. Jessica remembered how Sarah had tried to smear them on social media before. This time, if Sarah dared to cause trouble, Jessica would ensure her reputation was ruined, utterly destroyed. With her connections, she could easily make the story of Sarah's biracial baby go viral. Okay, let's sleep. Stop worrying about pointless things, Ethan said, glancing at the clock on the wall. It was almost 10. He pulled the covers up over both of them, ready for sleep. Jessica was pregnant, after all. She couldn't stay up late. Okay, Jessica murmured obediently, curling up in his arms and letting him hold her as they settled down to sleep. After the lights went out, the room plunged into darkness. Ethan held Jessica's soft, fragrant body close, closed his eyes, and prepared to rest. Ethan, Jessica's voice came from the darkness as she lifted her head again, her eyes shining brightly. I remembered something else. Ethan opened his eyes, resigned. What is it now? It's time for your marital duties today, Jessica declared, pouting with mock seriousness. Hearing this, Ethan felt a headache coming on. Jessica, he warned sternly, you're pregnant now. You need to exercise some self-control. Jessica protested, but you haven't performed your marital duties in days. Ethan replied gravely, I'm doing this for you and the baby. I'm afraid of hurting the baby. Ethan, are you not up to it anymore? What man could tolerate such a question? Ethan's temper flared instantly. He suddenly flipped over, pinning Jessica beneath him. Bring on. I'm not scared of you. Jessica flashed a mischievous grin, her eyes gleaming cunningly, her little scheme having succeeded. Half an hour later, honey, I was wrong. No more, darling, I'll never dare again. Please just let me go this time. The next day, 11:00 a.m. The sun was already high in the sky when Ethan and Jessica Smith finally, leisurely got out of bed and went downstairs together for breakfast. At the table, Ethan picked up a peeled shrimp and offered it to Jessica. I don't want it. It's your fault for teasing me so much last night. Jessica pouted, her small lips still slightly swollen. She gave Ethan a mock glare, looking a little miffed. Last night, she had wanted Ethan to perform his marital duty, never expecting it would ignite his competitive spirit. He'd almost completely worn her out. What? How is this my fault? Weren't you the one who wanted it? Ethan chuckled helplessly. Jessica had been the one to initiate things last night, yet now she was mad. What was that about? Ethan felt rather innocent and wronged. I don't care. It's still your fault, Jessica huffed, sticking out her lower lips stubbornly. Okay, my fault, all right? Hurry up and eat before it gets cold. Ethan relented helplessly. Hearing this, Jessica's anger finally subsided a bit. She opened her swollen lips and reluctantly accepted the shrimp Ethan offered. Oh, right. After we eat, we still need to go to Green Valley Mall. Didn't you arrange with Laura Miller yesterday to go together today? We shouldn't keep them waiting too long. Ethan suddenly remembered. Laura Miller had contacted Jessica after they got back from the hospital yesterday. Jessica, being in a great mood, had agreed to meet Laura at Green Valley Mall today. Oh yeah, I totally forgot until you mentioned it. I'll eat faster then, reminded by him. Jessica recalled the plan and began eating more quickly. As they were eating breakfast, Ethan's iPhone, sitting on the table, suddenly rang. Ethan put down his chopsticks, picked up the iPhone, glanced at the caller ID, and couldn't help but frown slightly. Who's calling? Jessica asked curiously, seeing him hesitate to answer. No one important, just Sarah's father, Ethan answered truthfully. The caller was indeed his former father-in-law, Michael Young. Why is he calling you? Jessica paused, surprised. I don't know. I'll ask. Ethan answered the call. Ethan, where are you? Michael Young's voice came through the phone quickly. But unlike before, the way Michael Young spoke to him this time lacked the arrogance and commanding tone of the past. Instead, it was rather polite. This caught Ethan somewhat by surprise. I'm eating at home. What do you need? Ethan got straight to the point, asking his reason for calling. Do you have some time? I'd like to meet with you. There are some things I want to tell you in person, Michael Young asked politely. If you're planning to convince me to get back together with your daughter, you should save your breath. There's no need for us to meet. Ethan didn't agree immediately. Michael Young, seeking him out, could only be about his daughter. No, you misunderstand. I'm not trying to persuade you to reconcile with my daughter, don't worry. I know my place now. It was my daughter who wronged you, and I don't have the face to ask you to get back with her. Michael Young's tone carried a clear note of guilt and remorse. Oh, is that so? Hearing this, Ethan considered for a moment, then nodded. All right then, you can come find me later. I happen to be taking my wife to Green Valley Mall shortly, so I can meet you along the way. Ethan was quite curious about what this old guy wanted to say. Since he was heading to Green Valley Mall anyway, meeting Michael Young wouldn't be out of his way. Okay, see you in a bit then. The call ended quickly. Michael Young wants to meet you? Jessica immediately asked. Yeah, he wants to see me. Says he has something he wants to tell me in person. Ethan nodded. Then you go meet him yourself later. I don't want to see anyone from the Young family right now. Laura Miller and I are going to the AMC theater later. Jessica currently had absolutely no goodwill towards the Young family and didn't even want to see them. All right, after breakfast, Ethan took Jessica downtown. After dropping Jessica off with Laura Miller, Ethan went to a park near Green Valley Memorial Hospital. Michael Young was already waiting there for him. Meanwhile, inside Green Valley Memorial Hospital, Sarah stood by the window, gazing out at the world. Under the bright sunlight, the entire world seemed bathed in light. But at this moment, her world felt entirely gray, devoid of a single spark. She stood there, lost in a daze, for a long time until a cool breeze blew in. Her body, still weak from childbirth, instantly felt a chill, prompting her to turn back into the VIP ward. In the hallway, many patients and nurses looked at her, their gazes strange. See her? That's the one. Gave birth to a biracial child yesterday. Damn, this woman looks so proper. Didn't expect her to be so wild. What's so great about foreigners? Why do these women insist on chasing after them? Now she's facing the consequences. Serves her right. Heard her husband left her. Well, serve her right. A single woman with a biracial baby. Let's see which man dares to want her in the future. Women like her deserve no sympathy. Promiscuous, cheating while married. Pfft. Disgusting. Feeling the stares of the people around her burning into her back, Sarah felt intensely uncomfortable. Their murmurs were like knives stabbing deep in her heart, causing sharp pangs of pain. Sarah pressed her lips together tightly, saying nothing, just lowering her head and quickening her pace towards the VIP ward. Soon, under everyone's watchful eyes, Sarah returned to the VIP room. She quickly shut the door, finally letting out a long sigh of relief, as if a heavy burden had been lifted. However, when she looked up, she found the other expectant mothers in the VIP ward, along with their visiting family members, all looking at her with peculiar expressions. Their gazes were exactly the same as those outside, a mixture of disdain and undisguised disgust. This made Sarah feel utterly mortified, overwhelmed with shame. She silently returned to her hospital bed and sat down quietly. The others in the VIP ward ignored her and continued their idle chatter. But they would still glance her way intentionally or unintentionally, their expressions showing open distaste. Sarah sat on the bed, silent, not daring to look at anyone. Right now, Green Valley Memorial Hospital felt like a cage, suffocating her. The thought of the black baby she had given birth to filled Sarah's heart with despair, sparking an urge to die. Back then, she had simply craved novelty, which led to that one-night stand with a foreigner. She never, ever thought that just that one time, one single time, she would get pregnant. It left her utterly desperate. At this moment, she was consumed by regret. She regretted it so bitterly. If she had known she would give birth to a black baby, she would never, ever have been so reckless. What am I going to do now? Sob, sob. The more she thought, the more desperate and regretful she became, tears streaming down her face uncontrollably. Seeing her suddenly burst into tears, everyone else in the VIP ward wore expressions, as if watching a drama. Everyone was taking pleasure in her misfortune. In everyone's eyes, a shameless woman like her ending up like this? She completely deserved it. In the deserted park stood a pavilion. Inside the pavilion was a stone table, complete with 4 stone stools. Michael Young sat on one of the stools, quietly waiting for Ethan to arrive. Ethan entered the pavilion and sat down opposite him. Looking at the man who was once his father-in-law, Ethan couldn't help but feel a daze come over him. The Michael Young before him, now, seemed to have aged 10 years overnight. His face bore a deep exhaustion, and his cloudy eyes were bloodshot. His entire demeanor screamed dejection. At the same time, Michael Young was also looking at Ethan, his former son-in-law, his gaze incredibly complex. All right, what did you want to see me about? Ethan didn't waste time with pleasantries, getting straight to the point. Michael Young sighed softly a hint of guilt in his expression. It's nothing much. I just wanted to apologize to you in person. Hearing this, Ethan looked surprised. He hadn't expected his formerly arrogant father-in-law, who had always looked down on him, to actually apologize, and so sincerely at that. Michael Young's tone carried a mix of emotion and deep helplessness as he continued. Ethan, I admit, I used to look down on you. I felt you weren't good enough for my precious daughter. I thought that with you, my precious daughter could never be happy. But everything that's happened since yesterday has made me suddenly realize I was wrong. Thinking back carefully, during the 3 years you were married to my daughter, you fulfilled your duties as a son-in-law and husband. You took on the responsibilities expected of you. It was I who was always too hard on you. After my daughter got pregnant, and you were seen with another woman, I became even more dissatisfied with you. I thought you had wronged my daughter, that my daughter was carrying your child, yet you were fooling around with someone else. But it wasn't until the child was born that I found out. I was truly mistaken. It was my daughter who cheated first. I always thought my daughter was just a bit willful, a bit temperamental, but when this child was born, I realized how far she'd gone. Only then did I understand why you became so cold, so ruthless towards my daughter. Michael Young looked at Ethan, his eyes filled with guilt. No man could accept his wife cheating, especially not cheating and giving birth to a black baby. Any man would find that intolerable. He was a man too, so he naturally empathized with Ethan, which was why he felt so guilty towards him. Ethan watched him, seeing his earnest repentance, and felt a flicker of understanding. So, you came here today to apologize? Michael Young nodded, then added, besides apologizing, I have something else I want to say to you. He paused for a moment before speaking slowly. Ethan, I know my daughter wronged you, but she's my daughter. After all, you two were married once. Even though my daughter did wrong, I hope you won't blame her. You're the man. I hope you can be magnanimous and not blame my daughter. If you must blame someone, blame me. Don't blame her. Ethan's brow furrowed slightly, and he couldn't help but chuckle twice. She gave birth to a black baby, and you're telling me not to blame her, telling me to be magnanimous? Ethan realized Michael Young hadn't come to apologize at all. He'd come to be ridiculous. Michael Young sighed. I know my daughter let you down terribly, but you're the man, and you were married. So, I hope you can be magnanimous. Ethan looked at his serious expression and couldn't help but laugh. So, you came here today just to tell me this, to ask me to forgive your daughter? Michael Young nodded, looking ashamed. Yes. Then I can only tell you, Michael Young, you came here for nothing today. Ethan replied coldly. What a joke. Asking him to forgive Sarah. Was this man serious? What man could possibly forgive that? Michael Young opened his mouth, seemingly wanting to say more, but just then his iPhone rang sharply in his pocket. Michael Young had to swallow his words, pull out his iPhone, and answer the call. Hello, Linda, what's wrong? Michael Young asked, his expression weary. The caller was indeed Linda. Michael Young, where the hell are you? Get back here now. Our daughter just tried to kill herself. There's so much blood. Hurry back. Woo! As soon as the call connected, Linda's frantic voice came through, tinged with helplessness. What? Michael Young shot up instantly, his eyes wide. Okay, I'm coming right back. Hanging up, Michael Young turned and sprinted towards Green Valley Memorial Hospital. Seeing this, Ethan quickly followed. Michael Young looked surprised to see Ethan catching up. Ethan, I didn't expect you'd still care about my daughter at a time like this. Michael Young was somewhat moved. He hadn't thought that despite Ethan's cold exterior, he actually still cared about his daughter. You're thinking too much. I just want to watch the drama unfold. Ethan deadpanned. Sarah attempting suicide? He was just tagging along to watch the show. Michael Young froze for a second, then said nothing more. The two ran all the way, quickly reaching Green Valley Memorial Hospital. Soon, they arrived outside the maternity ward. At that moment, Linda and Olivia Young were pacing anxiously, both at a loss. Especially Linda. She was holding her black baby grandson, tear tracks still wet on her face, looking utterly desperate. Michael, you're finally here. Oh, our daughter tried to kill herself. Seeing Michael Young arrive, Linda rushed towards him with the baby, as if grabbing on her pillar of support. How is she? Michael Young glanced at the maternity ward doors and asked quickly. The doctors are trying to save her. We don't know yet, Linda replied tearfully. Ethan, why are you here too? Olivia Young then noticed Ethan, her expression surprised. Hearing this, Linda finally realized Ethan had come too. Instantly, her expression twisted uncontrollably. Ethan, you jerk! How dare you show your face here? Linda glared daggers at Ethan, looking ready to charge over and tear him limb from limb. Ethan was speechless. Does your family own Green Valley Memorial Hospital? Why can't I be here? You. Linda was choked, speechless, only able to glare hatefully at Ethan. All right, just worry about our daughter first. Seeing Linda acting like a drama queen, Michael Young frowned, feeling a wave of exhaustion wash over him. Being stuck with a wife like this was truly frustrating sometimes. Oomph. Linda snorted coldly at Ethan, finally tearing her gaze away from him and turning towards the maternity ward. Just then, the doors to the maternity ward opened. Just then, the door to the emergency room opened. A female doctor walked out quickly. Who is Sarah's family? Come over here. We are. Michael Young and his wife Linda hurried over when they saw the doctor come out. Doctor, how is our daughter? Did she make it? Michael Young asked, looking at the doctor with a worried expression. The doctor's face was grave. Your daughter's condition is critical, she replied. She's lost a lot of blood and needs a transfusion now. Then, she looked at Ethan and Olivia. Which of you has type B or type O blood? The patient is type B. Since immediate family members aren't ideal donors, she turned to Ethan and Olivia, who looked like the patient's friends. At a time like this, they were the only hope. Wait, doctor, who did you say is type B? Michael Young suddenly froze, grabbing the doctor's sleeve, his face etched with disbelief. Your daughter? Who else? Don't you even know your own daughter's blood type? What kind of father are you? The doctor frowned, answering impatiently, her gaze tinged with scorn, clearly thinking him irresponsible. But Michael Young, hearing the answer, stood rooted to the spot, as if he'd heard something utterly unbelievable. Just then, Olivia stepped forward resignedly. Doctor, I'm type B too. You can use my blood. At a time like this, she was the only one who could save her BFF's life. Getting Ethan to donate blood for Sarah was out of the question. Ethan probably wished Sarah would die sooner rather than later. Okay, come with me. The doctor led Olivia away, turning back into the emergency room. That's wonderful. Our daughter is saved. Linda's face broke into a relieved smile. However, she didn't notice that her husband was currently frozen in a stupor. That's great, Michael. Linda turned to Michael Young. Our daughter should pull through. Only then did she notice her husband staring intently at her, his face dark and stormy. What's wrong, Michael? Why are you looking at me like that? Linda felt a chill and was utterly confused. She hadn't said anything wrong. Why did her husband suddenly seem like a different person? Michael Young glared at her, eyes bloodshot, and ground out through clenched teeth. Linda, I'm type A, you're type O. How can our daughter be type B? Michael Young, what are you talking about? Have you lost your mind? All this A, B, C, D stuff I don't understand. Linda frowned, looking annoyed. She was just a simple woman from the countryside, uneducated, and didn't know what blood types meant. Linda, whose daughter is she? Whose? Michael Young struggled to control his fury, eyes red, roaring loudly. Although he didn't have much education, he had attended middle school. He knew that type A and type O parents could absolutely not produce a type B child. In other words, Sarah's father wasn't him at all, but someone else. Ethan, standing nearby watching the drama unfold, widened his eyes. He hadn't expected such an unexpected bonus when he came over to watch the show. At this moment, Linda completely panicked. Faced with her husband's sudden explosion of rage, she was bewildered and confused. How had her deepest secret suddenly been exposed? She hadn't said anything. How did Michael Young find out? Michael Young, what are you yelling about? Sarah is your daughter. Linda refused to admit it, forcing herself to meet Michael Young's gaze, though she was terrified inside. My daughter? Linda, you're still lying to me even now. She's not my daughter. She's not. Michael Young couldn't hold back any longer. He roared furiously at her, then slapped her hard across the face. At that moment, he was like a volcano erupting suddenly. Overwhelming fury surged out, unstoppable. He never could have imagined that the precious daughter he had raised with such hardship, the apple of his eye, was actually someone else's child. At this moment, learning the truth, Michael Young felt like the world's biggest cuckold. He had been deceived by Linda for so many years, raising another man's daughter for so long. Thinking about it now, he felt like such a monumental idiot. Linda was stunned by the slap, clutching her face, feeling the stinging pain. The old Michael Young had always been at her beck and call, and now he dared to hit her? He'd completely lost it. Michael Young, you dare hit me? Linda glared at him venomously, grinding her teeth in hatred. I'm asking you, whose daughter is Sarah? Huh? Michael Young was like an enraged lion, his icy glare fixed on Linda, looking like he could eat her alive. She is your daughter. How many times do I have to tell you? Look, you've scared the baby. Linda felt increasingly guilty, but still forced herself to put on an innocent act. At that moment, The biracial baby grandchild she held in her arms started crying, frightened by the commotion. However, Michael Young, consumed by rage, had no mind for any of that right now. He only wanted to know who had cuckolded him. Linda, hurry up and tell me, whose child is Sarah? She's your daughter. She just is. Michael Young, what's gotten into you? Linda still wouldn't admit it. Seeing her stubborn refusal, Michael Young's anger flared again, and he backhanded her across the face. Slap. Linda was stunned again, eyes wide with disbelief. Wah-ah. The biracial baby was terrified and cried even louder. But Michael Young had no time for this bastard child. If the daughter wasn't his, this biracial bastard grandchild certainly had nothing to do with him. Linda, I'll ask you one last time. Are you going to tell me or not? Michael Young, you hit me. Sabu actually hit me. I don't want to live anymore. Linda hugged the baby, shrinking into a corner, weeping pitifully, looking utterly wronged. Fine. You won't talk, right? Linda, I want a divorce. From now on, you can live with your daughter and this bastard grandchild of yours. I'm done. Michael Young completely lost his patience, spat out the harsh words, and turned to leave. Leaving already? I haven't seen enough. Ethan, still watching the show, glanced at the sobbing Linda, then quickly went after Michael Young's retreating figure. Soon, Michael Young stormed out of the hospital, fuming. Ethan hurried to keep pace beside him. Seeing Michael's extreme, pent-up anger, he couldn't help but try to console him. Old man, even though your wife wronged you, you two were married for years. Just forgive her. A man should be more magnanimous. Ethan clapped him on the shoulder, persuading earnestly. Michael Young spun around, his red eyes startling. Get lost. Michael Young roared, then turned and walked away, simmering with suppressed rage. Ethan froze, watching his back recede into the distance. Wait, aren't those the exact words you said to me? Ethan shrugged, exasperated. Michael Young had lectured him the exact same way before. Now, he was saying the same thing back, and Michael was throwing a fit. Ethan really couldn't believe it. But watching Michael Young walk away, he didn't follow. Instead, he pulled out his iPhone and sent an iMessage to his wife, Jessica, asking where she was. He couldn't wait to tell Jessica the good news about Michael Young's family falling apart. Juicy gossip like this? Jessica would definitely love it. Soon, Jessica sent him her location. Ethan looked at the location. It wasn't far, and he knew the route well, so he pocketed his iPhone and decided to walk over to meet Jessica. Along the way, Ethan looked up at the clear sky, and for some reason, his mood inexplicably brightened. Noon, bright sunshine. The weather was perfect today, and Ethan's mood matched. In half an hour, Ethan arrived at a Starbucks on the street, following the address Jessica had sent him. The Starbucks wasn't crowded. It seemed rather quiet. Jessica and Laura were sitting in a corner, happily chatting and sipping milkshakes. Honey, over here. Seeing Ethan enter, Jessica's face immediately lit up with a smile, and she waved him over, calling out to him. Ethan smiled and walked over, sitting down next to Jessica. Here, honey, I ordered you a milkshake. Jessica pushed a milkshake towards Ethan, who was indeed thirsty. He stuck in a straw and took a large gulp. Ethan, Jessica told me your former father-in-law came looking for you today. Laura asked curiously, sipping her milkshake. Jessica had just told her about Sarah having a biracial baby, which had shocked her. It took her a while to recover. Then, hearing that Ethan had met with his former father-in-law today had piqued Laura's curiosity even further. She was very interested in what the two had discussed. Yeah, honey, what did Michael Young say to you? Jessica, her jade hand supporting her fragrant cheek, blinked her watery eyes, looking at him with great curiosity. I'm telling you, something else happened just now. Ethan put down his cup and immediately began to share with the two women. The story is a bit explosive. Let me tell it slowly. Ethan took a breath and, under the expectant gazes of the two women, began to tell the story from the beginning. Do you know what Michael Young wanted from me? He actually tried to persuade me to forgive his daughter, saying that I'm a man and should be more magnanimous and not hold a grudge against his daughter. Hearing this, Laura and Jessica both widened their eyes slightly. Wow, how shameless can he be? His daughter had a biracial baby, and he still asks you to be magnanimous. Jessica pouted, wrinkling her nose, her expression speechless. Exactly, his face is too thick. Laura nodded in agreement, feeling that Michael Young was disgusting. How could he ask Ethan to forgive his daughter after she had an affair? He even had the nerve to say it. Ethan continued, but you can rest assured, of course I didn't agree to him. His daughter wronged me. Of course I can't forgive her. He even wanted to persuade me, but then Linda suddenly called him, and Linda actually said that Sarah had tried to commit suicide by slitting her wrists in the hospital. Suicide? The two women's eyes widened in disbelief. Clearly, the news of Sarah's suicide was too shocking for them. Ethan, eager to share, was satisfied with the two women's reactions. He nodded and continued. Yes, Sarah did try to commit suicide by slitting her wrists, but that's not the most explosive part. After Michael Young and I arrived at the hospital, the doctor said Sarah needed a blood transfusion, and then Michael Young discovered that Sarah wasn't his biological daughter. What? The two women were stunned again, their mouths wide open, as if they could fit an egg inside. The news of Sarah's suicide was already unexpected enough. Who knew that things could develop like this in the end? Sarah wasn't Michael Young's daughter. Wow, that's too explosive, Ethan said with a smile. Then Michael Young slapped Linda twice, had a big fight in the hospital, and then left, saying he wouldn't care about Linda and her daughter anymore. Then what? Then what? Jessica grabbed Ethan's arm, completely hooked by curiosity, eager to know how things developed afterward. Ethan smiled. Then I left the hospital with Michael Young, and I kindly advised him that he should be more magnanimous. Although Linda wronged him, they were husband and wife after all, and he should forgive Linda. After all, men should be more magnanimous. Then he told me to get lost. Laura couldn't help but cover her mouth and laugh. Jessica also smiled, finding it very amusing. Michael Young had just finished advising Ethan to forgive Sarah, and then retribution fell on him. This is what they call karma. No one escapes fate. I didn't expect Sarah not to be Michael Young's daughter. I originally thought Sarah was outrageous enough, but I didn't expect her mother to be the real master. Laura shook her head with emotion. Even now, she hadn't fully recovered. She originally thought that Sarah having an affair and giving birth to a biracial baby was explosive enough. Who knew that Linda was the most hidden master? Michael Young had raised someone else's daughter for so many years. That's karma. Yeah, this mother and daughter are too explosive. Jessica also sighed softly. Even now, she was still somewhat shocked in her heart. She never imagined that Sarah wasn't his biological daughter. It's outrageously outrageous to the extreme. These mother and daughter are really interesting. Sarah probably never imagined that not only is her child biracial, but she is too. Like mother, like daughter. Laura couldn't help but find it a bit funny, and at the same time, she felt gratified. A woman like Sarah deserves her current fate. This is the retribution she deserves. By the way, honey, how is Sarah? Did she really commit suicide? Is she dead? After the shock, Jessica looked at Ethan, eagerly asking. She didn't hope Sarah was really dead. She simply wanted to know if Sarah had succeeded in killing herself or not. I don't know. Anyway, Olivia has already given her a blood transfusion. I don't know if she can be saved. Ethan shook his head and answered truthfully. To be honest, he was quite surprised to hear that Sarah had tried to commit suicide by slitting her wrists. After all, they had been together for 7 years, and suddenly she tried to kill herself. It was a bit hard to process. It's best if she's dead. A woman like that is wasting the world's air just by living. Laura curled her lips, looking disgusted. In her opinion, a woman like Sarah, with distorted values and moral corruption, is wasting the world's air just by living. Such a person should go to the 18th level of hell after death. All right, let's not talk about her. Anyway, what happens to her in the future has nothing to do with us. By the way, Laura, what about your boyfriend Daniel? Didn't he come out to go shopping with you? Ethan changed the subject. In his opinion, whatever happens to Sarah in the future has nothing to do with him. There's no need to put too much thought into such an insignificant person.